We've mapped the
Mayday,
surface
we
of
have a
Mars with
massive
millimeter
breach. It's
precision.
pulling the boat
We've
down.
photographed galaxies billions of light years away.
What is that
Yet,
thing?
80% of our own ocean floor remains completely uncharted. Think about that. We know more about alien worlds than the waters beneath our feet, the crushing depths, the absolute darkness, the perfect hiding place. For decades, military sonar has detected impossible movements in the deep, objects accelerating at speeds that would liquefy any known craft, descending to pressures that should obliterate steel like tissue paper. Acoustic signatures with no classification, no explanation, just redacted. Sailors whisper about encounters they're forbidden to report. Submarine commanders file incidents that disappear into classified vaults. And beneath it all, a question science refuses to ask. What if we're not alone down there? What if something ancient has been watching from the abyss, waiting? Military documentation, acoustic data, and countless eyewitness reports point to unidentified activities lurking beneath the waves. Objects that seem to challenge our understanding of physics, movements implying a technology far advanced from our own, and sporadic accounts of entities glimpsed in places where no human should venture. While any one of these mysteries could be dismissed, collectively they hint at something more significant: the notion that civilizations may inhabit these depths, hidden from our detection, with vehicles and bases beyond our comprehension. As we continue to scan the cosmos for evidence of life, it is worth pondering whether the true revelation might not emerge from the heavens, but rather from the depths below. Could there be entire civilizations, complete with vehicles, installations, and sophisticated beings, already existing beneath our feet? Humanity's fascination with the ocean's mysteries is long-standing. Since the dawn of time, we have sensed there might be life beneath its waves. The vastness of the sea is sufficient to conceal entire societies, and it has always evoked both wonder and trepidation. Long before the advent of scientific inquiry, cultures around the globe spun tales of underwater realms and beings emerging from the deep. Though these narratives span oceans and eras, many resonate with striking similarity. Perhaps these were not mere flights of fancy, but rather the earliest human accounts of encounters with something tangible, later remembered as myth. Atlantis stands as the most renowned of these tales. Circa 360 BCE, the Greek philosopher Plato recounted a grand island civilization beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we know today as the Strait of Gibraltar. He described Atlantis as affluent, technologically advanced, and militarily formidable. However, following an ill-fated attempt to conquer Athens, it incurred the wrath of the gods and was lost to the sea in a single day of misfortune. Scholars have since debated whether Plato intended to convey an allegory, whether he recalled a genuine disaster resembling the volcanic obliteration of the Minoan civilization on Santorini, or whether he hinted at something altogether different. Whatever the reality may be, the vision of a vanished advanced society submerged in the ocean endures. For centuries, adventurers have sought Atlantis in the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, and even Antarctica. The persistent belief in the existence of a concealed advanced populace lurking beneath the sea remains steadfast. In the Pacific, a parallel legend emerged. Lemuria was proposed in the 19th century by zoologists as a sunken land bridge to rationalize the distribution of lemurs. The concept swiftly escaped scientific bounds and permeated popular lore. Occult writers transformed Lemuria into a mythic sunken continent inhabited by a civilization of advanced beings obliterated by disaster. Although modern science categorically dismisses Lemuria as pseudoscience, its allure illustrates a familiar pattern. When gaps appear in our historical narrative, people are inclined to imagine lost civilizations, frequently locating them beneath the sea. Other traditions echo this motif. Norse mythology refers to Aegir, a sea deity residing in a luminous hall under the ocean where he hosted feasts for the gods. His daughters, the wave maidens, embodied the ocean's might, suggesting a society thriving beneath the waves. In Polynesian belief, the great god Tangaroa presided over life in the ocean, while myth spoke of voyagers navigating in star canoes, that traversed between sea and sky. Here, the depths and the heavens were described as intertwined realms. Similarly, in Native American cultures, the ocean and the stars were frequently interconnected. The Hopi traced the lineage of certain clans to entities emerging from the waters below the earth. Along the coastal provinces of the Pacific Northwest, indigenous tribes recounted visions of radiant figures arising from the sea, imparting knowledge of agriculture and survival before vanishing back into the ocean's embrace. In Mesopotamia, the Babylonians chronicled the tale of Oans, a half-human, half-fish being who surfaced from the Persian Gulf. Daily, he educated humanity about farming, literacy, and governance, only to disappear back into the waters as night fell. The details are profoundly intriguing. A being not of this world associated with the ocean, imparting wisdom to early humans. In Mesoamerica, both the Maya and the Aztecs depicted serpent-like amphibious entities linked to rain, enlightenment, and creation. Again, the association of intelligence with water emerges. Clear patterns arise from these tales: civilizations submerged beneath the sea, beings that emerge from the depths, figures that bestow knowledge only to dissolve back into obscurity. Frequently, there exists a connection between these entities, the ocean and celestial realms, suggesting origins that extend beyond our comprehension. While one can dismiss this as mere coincidence, the recurring themes across cultures with no direct ties indicate something more profound, perhaps an inherent instinct within humanity or memories of genuine encounters morphed into myth over time. Before the language of scientific terminology existed, individuals lacked vocabulary for spacecraft or non-human entities. A radiant vessel surfacing from the sea could very well be recalled as a star canoe. A figure in formal attire might be regarded as a deity of the seas. A fleeting glimpse of an advanced civilization lay in ruins could transform into the ancient myth of Atlantis. While imagination may embellish the narratives, the fundamental motifs could retain whispers of authentic occurrences. Anthropologists highlight how oral histories often capture elements of truth. Stories of cataclysmic floods permeate nearly every civilization and likely originate from actual prehistoric deluges. Similarly, tales of radiant beings, underwater realms, and deities of the oceans may represent the vestiges of remarkable events transmitted through generations until they metamorphosed into myth. Contemporary accounts evoke a sense of eerie familiarity. Sonar anomalies, luminescent vessels disappearing beneath the waves, and encounters with unidentified submerged objects resonate with the narratives of antiquity. When current naval documentation is juxtaposed with the legends of Oans or the Hopi Star People, the parallels become strikingly evident. Perhaps what we categorize as myths were not products of mere fancy, but humanity's earliest efforts to chronicle encounters with something advanced, concealed within the oceans. The human tendency to envision intelligence lurking in the depths has remained steadfast throughout the ages. To early societies, it manifested as deities, mentors, and empires concealed beneath the waves. To us, it presents itself as the cryptic traces of sonar, hydroacoustic enigmas, and eyewitness accounts. The filament connecting these ideas has never frayed. What may once have been enshrined as mythology could now be acknowledged for what it genuinely was: encounters with an intelligence beyond our own, shrouded in the abyss. Turning our attention to the intricate chapter of USO interactions, when one considers the term UFO, the mind typically conjures images of bizarre objects darting through the sky. However, for many decades, another category has quietly emerged, reported continuously by military personnel, sailors, and fishermen alike. Unidentified submerged objects, commonly referred to as USOs, denote craft or anomalies not soaring through the air, but residing beneath the surface of the ocean. This differentiation bears significance. While UFOs command the bulk of public intrigue, USOs might provide more compelling evidence that advanced civilizations could already be lurking in our own waters, shrouded in secrecy beneath the waves. The modern history of USOs traces back to the tumult of World War II. Various submarines and naval vessels from numerous nations recorded encounters involving objects exhibiting movements impossible for known crafts. German U-boat logs recount incidents of rapid luminescent lights shadowing their maneuvers across the Atlantic. Some commanders proclaimed having witnessed radiant spheres diving into the sea and matching the speed of their submarines before vanishing into the depths. Allied forces reported similar phenomena. In 1942, U.S. Navy destroyers patrolling the Caribbean detected sonar contacts traversing faster than any torpedo. British destroyers operating in the Norwegian Sea documented sonar returns that accelerated astonishingly from a complete standstill to speeds of hundreds of knots. At the time, these occurrences were classified and written off as mere sensor malfunctions. Yet, decades later, declassified documents validated that both factions had indeed observed phenomena that defied contemporary engineering principles. Such encounters bore resemblance to the enigmatic Foo Fighters witnessed by Allied pilots in the skies, those glowing orbs trailing bombers over Europe and in the Pacific theater. While the Foo Fighters danced above the clouds, their submerged counterparts suggested a parallel technology operating beneath the ocean's surface. If advanced crafts possessed the ability to fluidly traverse both air and water, the ocean offered an unparalleled sanctuary. Among the most thoroughly documented USO incidents took place in Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, in October 1967. Numerous witnesses observed a luminescent object streaking across the sky, ultimately crashing into the water near this fishing community. Anticipating debris or the wreckage of an aircraft, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police initiated an investigation. What they discovered, however, was a glowing object buoyantly floating momentarily before it sank below the surface. Canadian Navy divers were subsequently dispatched. According to later reports, these divers encountered luminous crafts gliding along the ocean floor. Some diver accounts described the objects as disc-shaped, radiant, and seemingly undamaged. The official report acknowledged an unidentified object's entry into the water, yet no conventional explanation was ever substantiated. Shag Harbor holds particular significance as the incident was treated from the outset as a bona fide occurrence. Police documented reports, military resources were mobilized, and divers undertook risks in murky waters. Yet, the outcome, alluding to no debunked wreckage, no remains, and no answers, aligns with the nature of USOs. Tangible events meticulously recorded yet culminating in enigma. The waters off Southern California, especially the Catalina Channel that runs between Long Beach and Santa Catalina Island, have emerged as a hotspot for USO sightings for several decades. Fishermen, divers, and even Navy personnel have described luminescent entities entering and exiting the sea without causing any detectable disturbance. Radar operators at nearby installations have pursued unidentified crafts through the air only to witness them plunge into the ocean at remarkable velocities. In numerous instances, these crafts reappeared mere minutes later, located miles away from their initial point of entry. Civilian eyewitnesses have recounted observations of disks and spheres gliding noiselessly into the water, creating no splash. A renowned incident from the 1990s involved multiple individuals aboard a private yacht who witnessed a glowing object ascend from the water near Avalon, hover briefly, and then accelerate upward into the sky. Commercial pilots en route to Los Angeles International Airport have similarly reported unusual lights observed beneath the ocean in that vicinity. Researchers assert that Catalina is situated near the Navy's Pacific testing ranges, where some of the most sophisticated sonar and radar technologies operate. Should unidentified crafts indeed be maneuvering beneath the waves, this area, heavily monitored yet expansive, would present a logical candidate for clandestine operations. The deepest abyss in the Atlantic Ocean, the Puerto Rico Trench, has repeatedly borne witness to USO encounters. During the 1970s and 1980s, fishermen reported luminous orbs swimming beneath their boats, sometimes substantial enough to light up the seafloor. Pilots navigating nearby described lights ascending from the ocean at utterly astonishing rates. The U.S. Navy also logged sonar anomalies within the trench's depths. Declassified records revealed contacts significantly larger than conventional submarines, traversing at astonishing velocities exceeding hundreds of knots. Several sonar operators initially suspected they were surveilling enemy vessels, only to watch their targets disappear instantaneously. Additionally, Puerto Rico has emerged as a prominent site for aerial UFO sightings, with residents frequently associating these phenomena with the adjacent deep waters. Some researchers speculate that this very trench might house a hidden base, a natural environment shielded from human discovery yet accessible to advanced craft. Besides these three major case studies, an abundance of USO incidents has been documented across the globe. In 1958, crew members aboard the USS Franklin D. Roosevelt witnessed a disc-shaped object penetrate the water near Puerto Rico. In 1971, while the USS Trapang was operating in Arctic conditions, it captured photographs of a disc-like craft near icy fields, although the credibility of these images remains contentious. Meanwhile, in the Soviet Union, submarines persistently tracked fast-moving objects within both the Arctic and Pacific Oceans. Crew members reported witnessing entities dive beneath ice caps, effortlessly outrunning their submarines. Declassified accounts from 2009 illustrate the extraordinary speeds of these findings, ranging from 200 to 300 knots underwater, far surpassing any known human engineering capabilities. Notably, such accounts are not relegated to the annals of the Cold War. In 2004, during the Nimitz encounter off California, Navy pilots monitored a Tic Tac-shaped UFO descending into the ocean and subsequently vanishing. Radar operators verified the contact, yet recovery attempts yielded no results. This incident, officially recognized by the U.S. Department of Defense, illustrates that USOs are not merely historical anecdotes, but an ongoing phenomenon. Collectively, these reports delineate a pattern. USOs are not sporadic curiosities, they represent a persistent global phenomenon. Witnessed by both civilians and military personnel alike, these objects transcend geographical boundaries across decades, frequently surfacing in every ocean. Their presence is tracked by sonar and radar, often validated by multiple independent sources. The capabilities displayed by these entities, remarkable speed, seamless transitions between air and water, and silent operations, remain unmatched by human technology. If these objects were simply experimental crafts, we would anticipate an array of leaks, prototypes, or gradual incorporation into recognized military forces. Yet, their existence continues to elude explanation. The consistency of these sightings suggests that USOs could be part of a more extensive system, a presence operating beneath our oceans, potentially for eons, predating human existence. When juxtaposed with ancient myths, the parallels become striking. Lore from ages past spoke of radiant figures emerging from the sea or civilizations submerged beneath the waves. Modern observers recount glowing crafts plunging into the waters, while sonar operators track entities traveling at implausible speeds. Although the terminology has evolved, the fundamental narratives remain steadfast. While the UFO enigma frequently directs our gaze toward the stars, USOs compel us to redirect our focus. If advanced civilizations inhabit our world, the prevailing evidence intimates that they may not linger above us, but rather dwell beneath oceanic expanses, physical evidence, and oceanic anomalies. Eyewitness accounts can often be dismissed as misunderstandings or embellishments. However, concerning unidentified submerged objects, the oceans themselves hold a trove of recorded evidence. Sonar metrics, hydroacoustic signals, and even the geological formations of the seabed offer insights that suggest an unusual presence operating beneath the waves, something that defies human engineering and natural explanations alike. Throughout the Cold War, navies worldwide engaged in relentless surveillance of the oceans. Submarines navigated under a veil of secrecy, meticulously logging every sonar anomaly that manifested. Among these logs exists a category of targets referred to by both American and Soviet sailors as fast movers. Distinct from whales, submarines, or torpedoes, these entities were detected traversing the seas at speeds reaching hundreds of knots. An anonymous U.S. Navy submarine captain later disclosed that his crew once tracked a submerged contact accelerating at several hundred knots, an impossibility given existing propulsion systems. The swiftest submarine operational at the time barely managed 40 knots submerged, while torpedoes achieved a maximum of 50 knots. Yet these mysterious contacts accelerated and maneuvered as if they were impervious to water resistance. Soviet naval forces reported identical anomalies. In 2009, declassified Russian naval records validated that submarine crews persistently tracked underwater entities traveling at velocities unattainable by human technology. Some of these objects were logged in Arctic waters, navigating beneath ice sheets, while others were traced near Kamchatka in the Pacific, ascending and diving at unprecedented angles. Soviet officers designated these objects as something other than ordinary. They occurred repeatedly over numerous decades, monitored by trained sonar operators adept at recognizing every natural and mechanical sound in the sea. Many believed they were witnessing technology that transcended both Russian and American origins, something entirely unknown. Oceans have been under constant observation, not solely by military forces, but also by scientists. The U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration maintains a global array of hydrophones, underwater microphones initially developed to detect nuclear detonations. Over time, these sensors have captured unexplained sounds of considerable magnitude. In 1997, one of the loudest underwater sounds ever recorded was detected across a network of hydrophones thousands of miles apart. Dubbed the Bloop, it constituted a low-frequency noise so powerful it could be heard over 3,000 meters of ocean depth. Some scientists proposed it resembled the call of a colossal marine creature, despite the fact that no known species could produce such intensity. Subsequent theories suggested the sound might emanate from shifting ice shelves, yet its characteristics remained peculiar, with its true source unresolved. Just 2 years later, in 1999, another unexplained sound was captured, referred to as Julia. Hydrophones detected a prolonged, eerie roar, described by analysts as mechanical in nature. While the NOAA speculated it could stem from ice fracturing in Antarctica, the spectrograms for Julia displayed patterns that led some to question whether the noise was entirely natural. Another instance of an upsweep signal has been recorded since 1991, persisting into the present day. This signal comprises a prolonged series of ascending tones, manifesting most intensely during the spring and autumn seasons and emanating from the Pacific Ocean near volcanic ridges. Despite years of dedicated observation, scientists have yet to provide a comprehensive explanation for its origins. While these individual sounds could be dismissed as mere natural phenomena, collectively they outline a pattern of enigmatic occurrences on a global scale. These persistent signals boast the strength to traverse entire oceans, yet their definitive source remains elusive. Beyond the auditory evidence and sonar readings, entities exist in the form of physical anomalies, underwater structures that evoke the semblance of artificial construction. Some may indeed be naturally occurring, yet others challenge conventional understanding. For instance, off the coast of Yonaguni, Japan, divers uncovered a grand stone formation resembling a stepped pyramid in the 1980s. Known as the Yonaguni Monument, this awe-inspiring site features sharp angles, terraces, and flat surfaces, all appearing to be purposefully sculpted. A faction of geologists contends that this is simply a natural formation shaped by ocean currents and seismic activity. Conversely, another group highlights tool marks and the monument's symmetry as compelling indications of human or non-human craftsmanship. Should it indeed be artificial, this discovery suggests the existence of an advanced civilization within the region, over 10,000 years ago, predating the cataclysmic floods of the last ice age. In 2011, A team of Swedish divers, while investigating shipwrecks in the Baltic Sea, stumbled upon a disc-shaped structure measuring approximately 60 meters in diameter, resting at a depth of 90 meters beneath the surface. Dubbed the Baltic Sea Anomaly, this formation exhibited right angles and characteristics reminiscent of staircases. Divers reported unusual electrical interference when drawing near the object, resulting in equipment malfunctions. Skeptics propose it might merely be a glacial deposit. However, the geometric features and the unexplained electronic disturbances continue to fuel a heated debate. In 2001, a group of Cuban marine researchers utilizing sonar equipment discovered what appeared to be a submerged city along the western coast of Cuba. At a depth of 700 meters, their instruments revealed geometric shapes akin to pyramids, roads, and other structures. Though this revelation garnered significant media attention, it ultimately lacked follow-up investigations, hindered by both funding issues and political entanglements. As a result, the sonar images remain a mystery to this day. Near Andros Island in the Bahamas, divers have documented a series of submerged walls and linear formations that bear a striking resemblance to ancient constructions. Known as the Andros Wall, these formations have drawn comparisons to established human-made structures. While some skeptics attribute these anomalies to natural beach rock formations, the consistent uniformity and scale continue to provoke inquiry. The most compelling aspect of these anomalies is their intersection. On one hand, military navies have recorded fast-moving objects and tracked them at implausible velocities. On the other hand, scientists have documented sounds of tremendous power without any clear natural explanation. Simultaneously, divers and explorers have discovered formations that appear too geometric to be mere accidents of geological processes. Declassified files from both the United States and Soviet Union reveal that officials quietly recognized the existence of these unexplained phenomena. In the 1970s, Soviet Admiral Nikolai Smirnov initiated a systematic investigation into underwater anomalies following a series of submarine encounters. In the United States, Project Blue Book systematically ignored unexplained submerged objects. However, naval archives indicate that sonar operators frequently noted unexplainable contacts. Both nations acknowledged that something unfamiliar was operating beneath the ocean's surface, yet neither could elucidate nor control it. The importance of physical evidence lies in its ability to transcend mere anecdotal accounts. These occurrences are not fabrications or isolated sightings. They consist of data meticulously recorded by instruments, sensors, and scientific expeditions. The anomalies remain consistently documented. Objects exhibit movement at extraordinary speeds. Sounds of immense power resonate with no identified origin. Structures resting on the seafloor exhibit engineered appearances. While skeptics propose natural explanations, including drifting icebergs, geological formations, and misidentified sonar readings, there may indeed be some validity to these assertions. However, the durability and scale of these anomalies, persisting across decades and nations, suggest a narrative that is far more profound. If civilizations were indeed operating beneath the ocean's surface, one would anticipate them to leave traces precisely in these forms: movements detectable on sonar, signals captured by hydrophones, and structures visible within the ocean depths. While the ocean is vast, it is unlikely to obscure their presence entirely. The evidence available may only represent fragments, mere glimpses of a broader reality concealed by depth and pressure. Nonetheless, those fragments, when combined, lead decisively to a single conclusion: the oceans are not barren. Something extraordinary exists within their depths, and it leaves an unmistakable record. The ocean as habitat for advanced civilizations. If unidentified craft are indeed navigating the seas, one significant question arises: how would they survive within such a demanding environment? The deep ocean represents one of the Earth's most extreme habitats, fraught with crushing pressure, near-freezing temperatures, and perpetual darkness. Human technology faces tremendous challenges even at minor depths. The most capable submersibles can descend approximately 7 miles, albeit for limited duration, operating precariously close to structural failure. Yet, if reports regarding unidentified submerged objects are accurate, describing crafts accelerating at hundreds of knots, plunging effortlessly into trenches, and glowing at the ocean floor, then whoever commands these vessels has already mastered. The ocean is a viable habitat. At the deepest point of the Mariana Trench, nearly 7 miles down, the pressure exceeds 1,000 times that of sea level. A steel submarine hull would collapse under such conditions, while water temperatures linger just above freezing. In this region, darkness reigns and food sources are scarce. To human perception, this environment appears hostile to life. Nevertheless, the crafts reported in interactions with unidentified submerged objects seem impervious to these harsh conditions. Soviet and American sonar operators have tracked submerged contacts descending thousands of meters within seconds. Submariners from the United States have described fast-moving objects accelerating as though burdened by no drag whatsoever. Russian crews reported encounters involving objects traveling at speeds of 200 to 300 knots, several times faster than even the most sophisticated torpedoes. If these accounts prove accurate, it indicates that these crafts do more than survive in the deep, they thrive. They use it as their realm. Physicists who have examined such phenomena propose that propulsion systems that surpass the established principles of mechanics may play a role. One theory suggests a method of manipulating gravity, wherein a craft creates its own localized gravitational field. This could initiate a protective bubble around the vessel, displacing the water and negating drag. Another hypothesis considers a plasma sheath, an envelope of ionized particles that repels surrounding fluid. Whichever method is employed would empower a vessel to defy hydrodynamic regulations, allowing it to navigate with no resistance, turbulence, or risk of crushing pressure. Such explanations could account for why witnesses frequently recount disks diving into the ocean without creating a splash, or why sonar operators report swift, sharp turns at high velocities. These maneuvers may contradict conventional physics, yet they align with the idea that the water itself is being displaced around the object. Reports concerning transmedium craft capable of gliding effortlessly between air and water represent some of the most striking consistencies in this phenomenon. Observers have seen luminous disks plunge into the sea with no trace of disturbance. Naval radar teams have tracked objects ascending from the depths and hurtling into the sky. Sonar teams from submarines have momentarily locked onto targets that obliterate speeds achieved by any human-operated vessel, only to watch as these entities abruptly vanish from detection. For humans, the drag experienced in aquatic environments presents a fundamental limitation. The energy necessary to propel an object to extreme velocities through dense fluids is staggering. For instance, a torpedo achieving speeds of 100 knots requires sophisticated propulsion technology that generates significant heat and turbulence. Yet, the high-speed entities documented in both United States and Soviet records glide through aquatic environments effortlessly, hinting at a propulsion mechanism unrelated to chemical fuels or traditional propellers. If this type of technology is indeed present, then the ocean transforms from a mere obstacle into a strategic advantage. Crafts can plunge into the depths, remain concealed, and surface precisely when they choose. The very restrictions that render the ocean perilous for humans may create an optimal sanctuary for civilizations equipped with advanced engineering. Even on Earth, nature has showcased stunning adaptations to extreme conditions. At hydrothermal vents situated miles below the surface, tube worms thrive, reaching sizes greater than a human, living off chemical energy emitted by volcanic activity. Similarly, shrimps and crabs flourish in waters so acidic and hot that most life forms would dissolve. At the depths of the Mariana Trench, microbes endure pressures that would obliterate steel. Perhaps the most extraordinary examples are tardigrades, minuscule organisms that withstand extreme vacuum, radiation, and temperatures ranging from freezing to boiling. In experimental settings, they have even survived brief exposure to the vacuum of outer space. These instances illustrate that thriving in inhospitable conditions is not only feasible, but in fact, inherent to life itself. If life on Earth can embody such resilience, then a civilization equipped with advanced technology could easily transcend these limits. They could tap into the energy produced by geothermal vents, construct habitats in deep trenches, and operate machinery impervious to cold and pressure. What humanity perceives as lethal, they could perceive as home. The oceans also deliver unparalleled concealment. 70% of Earth's surface is shrouded in water, with over 80% of it remaining unmapped in any meaningful detail. While satellites scan the skies continuously, sonar coverage of the ocean remains confined to shipping lanes, naval patrol regions, and select research endeavors. The majority of the seafloor remains unobserved. For a civilization aiming to stay hidden, this offers the ocean as the perfect sanctuary. Crafts could glide beneath the waves undisturbed, while bases might be constructed in the depths of trenches or beneath thermal vents. Entire populations could persist unnoticed, even amidst reports of anomalies. Fast-moving signals on sonar, glowing shapes beneath fishing boats, or peculiar acoustic signals can be readily dismissed as glitches, marine life, or geological noise. The ocean similarly offers defense against human weaponry. Missiles, bombs, and radar-directed systems are primarily engineered for use in air and on land, thus limiting their effectiveness underwater. A civilization residing beneath the waves would find protection not only from human observation, but also from human armaments. It is hardly coincidental that numerous unidentified submersible object reports converge around deep ocean trenches like the Puerto Rico Trench in the Atlantic, the Mariana Trench in the Pacific, and the underwater landscape beneath the icy Arctic region. These locales represent areas where human access is minimal, yet concealment is maximized. The most thought-provoking notion is that these are not visitors from far-off stars, but rather inhabitants who have been among us all along. The Earth has existed for 4.5 billion years, while modern humans emerged less than 300,000 years ago, a mere blink in the extensive timeline of geology. Countless species have risen and fallen before our arrival. Civilizations might have emerged eons before humanity and opted for the ocean as their refuge from cataclysms that reshaped terrestrial life. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, and colossal floods have continually obliterated surface ecosystems. Entire continents have risen, fallen, and crumbled. If a civilization existed in the deep annals of time, the surface may have erased all signs of its existence, while its aquatic strongholds persevered. Myths like Atlantis or Lemuria could embody collective memories of outposts that sank into oblivion, while the authentic centers of civilization remained concealed beneath the waves. Contemporary descriptions, sonar detections, hydroacoustic anomalies, and encounters with humanoid figures clad in suits might represent mere vestiges of contact with these enduring societies. Rather than being extraterrestrial visitors arriving from distant realms, they may be ultra-terrestrial beings, older than us, coexisting with us, yet hidden within domains we have scarcely begun to explore. Viewing the ocean as a habitat significantly alters the framework surrounding the UFO conundrum. Rather than scanning light years away for indicators of life, we must confront the possibility that civilizations already share this planet alongside us. They do not linger among the stars, but instead navigate quietly within the vast expanses of our oceans. If the accounts hold any merit, these entities have perfected propulsion systems that eradicate drag, cloaking technologies that withstand immense pressure, and living quarters that tap into the planet's very own energies. In selecting the ocean as their domain, they inhabit an arena that remains largely untamed by mankind, a place enveloped in darkness, silence, and mystery. The ramifications of this premise are staggering. For many years, humanity has gazed upward, longing for contact with extraterrestrial beings. Yet, the revelation may originate not from above, but from the depths where civilizations have patiently awaited our recognition, shrouded by the immense weight and obscurity of the deep sea, operating elusively just out of our grasp. Government and military entanglements. Regarding unidentified submerged objects, governments and military bodies have maintained a dual purpose. They serve both as the principal gatherers of evidence and as its most formidable suppressors. While civilian observers may recount their experiences, it is the naval forces that oversee sonar data, submarine logs, and classified intelligence reports. From the Cold War era to contemporary times, both the United States and the Soviet Union covertly amassed evidence of objects navigating beneath the waves, material that remained largely undisclosed to the public eye. The Cold War was characterized by relentless scrutiny, with American and Soviet submarines roaming the oceans, equipped with nuclear weaponry, listening intently for any indication of adversarial activity. Every sonar spike and every enigmatic noise was meticulously recorded. Under such circumstances, unidentified submerged objects were not merely anomalies, they posed potential threats. Both superpowers were wary that acknowledging these irregularities could reveal vulnerabilities in their detection capabilities or incite panic over unrecognized incursions. Reports detailing rapid-moving entities, objects traveling at speeds exceeding 200 knots underwater, were quietly relegated to classified status. Publicly, neither side admitted to tracking vehicles beyond the limits of their existing technology. However, private files narrate a different reality. In 2009, Russian media uncovered a plethora of Soviet Navy documents declassified following the disintegration of the USSR. These records disclosed that Soviet submarines had persistently encountered unidentified submerged phenomena in the Arctic, Pacific, and Black Seas. One document detailed an Arctic patrol during which sonar operators detected multiple objects exceeding speeds of 200 knots. The commanding officer speculated that advanced NATO technology was tracking him. However, when the objects executed maneuvers far surpassing any recognized submarine capabilities, plunging thousands of meters in mere seconds, that explanation collapsed. The log simply classified them as neo-Posnified objects. Another file detailed encounters within the Bermuda Triangle, where Soviet vessels reported luminous disks beneath the surface. Certain accounts described these entities surfacing before accelerating into the sky, while others depicted disks diving into the depths as if the boundary between air and water was irrelevant. The recurring nature of these reports in tandem with American accounts of unidentified submerged objects indicates a widespread phenomenon, transcending any particular Navy or maritime boundary. The most unsettling case documented in the Soviet files emerged from Lake Baikal in 1982, where a contingent of military divers encountered humanoid figures clad in reflective suits at a depth of approximately 50 meters. The beings were described as towering at 3 meters, equipped with helmets and gear dissimilar to any known diving apparatus. Upon attempting to capture one of these beings, the divers were abruptly propelled to the surface. 3 of the divers succumbed to decompression accidents. The event was classified immediately, with the official narrative stating that they drowned during a training exercise. Unofficially, however, their tale circulated among the Soviet Navy as an indication that something beyond human comprehension operated within our planet's waters. Meanwhile, the United States collected its own materials, albeit under even stricter secrecy. Between 1952 and 1969, Project Blue Book undertook investigations into UFO phenomena, scrutinizing over 12,000 cases. Nevertheless, Blue Book barely acknowledged unidentified submerged objects, despite numerous accounts of such encounters by naval personnel. Investigators who analyzed declassified Blue Book documents later discovered evidence of underwater sightings that had been deliberately overlooked. The official stance of the program aimed to provide public reassurance while discouraging inquiries into oceanic anomalies. One case, which unexpectedly penetrated UFO literature, involved the USS Trapang, a U.S. Navy submarine deployed in the Arctic during 1971. Photographic evidence purportedly captured during the mission presented disc-like objects near the ice. Opinions vary regarding the authenticity of these images. Some claim they represent misidentified debris, while others assert they depict legitimate craft. The case remains contentious, yet it illustrates a broader trend. Naval encounters with unidentified submerged objects were kept distant from public initiatives like Bloop, buried deep within classified naval intelligence. While Air Force and civilian UFO reports made headlines, incidents involving unidentified submerged objects lingered in relative silence, sealed within sonar records and after-action reports. This reticence may clarify why the subject has failed to resonate within mainstream conversations. Much of the credible evidence found itself classified from the outset. Recently, however, the United States has been obliged to confront what it previously overlooked. In 2004, the USS Nimitz carrier strike group, situated off the Californian coast, encountered a phenomenon described by pilots as a Tic Tac craft. Commander David Fravor recounted observing the object plummet swiftly from altitude before hovering just above the ocean's surface. At one juncture, the craft appeared to dive beneath the waves, disappearing from view. Radar operators confirmed the contact's sudden absence underwater. Efforts to recover the object yielded nothing. The encounter involving the Nimitz is particularly significant due to the presence of multiple witnesses, radar verification, and physical evidence of a craft displaying transmedium capabilities, effortlessly transitioning between air and water. For decades, such narratives had been deemed implausible, yet the unfolding reality challenges our preconceived notions about what exists beyond our understanding. Yet, here unfolded a contemporary instance that defied conventional understanding. In 2019, fresh Navy footage emerged, capturing unidentified crafts through infrared lenses. Reports from Pentagon insiders indicated that some of these entities were of the transmedium variety, gliding smoothly between air and water without discernible propulsion mechanisms. Established in the late 2000 decade, the Pentagon's UAP task force has since confirmed it is diligently investigating such occurrences. While the official vernacular remains measured, the implications are unmistakable. These unidentified objects extend their presence beyond the skies. They also navigate the deep seas. Military intelligence is aware of this reality. Historically, governments have refrained from addressing USOs openly. For the Soviet Union, this aura of secrecy stemmed from concerns over national security. For the United States, maintaining silence served to divert public scrutiny away from inquiries that could not be properly addressed by the military. Nonetheless, both naval forces recorded the same intriguing anomalies: crafts displaying impossible velocities, disks departing from the ocean's surface and re-entering it, and sonar detections of entities far too grand and swift to be conventional. Submarines. The leaked documents offer merely glimpses into this concealed world. Incidents of Soviet submarines being pursued by elusive fast-moving objects in Arctic waters, reports of divers encountering humanoid figures in Lake Baikal, and U.S. pilots witnessing Tic Tac-shaped crafts vanish into the ocean all contribute to a mosaic of hints that together suggest a coherent truth. Something beyond human delineation occupies our oceans, and it is evident that governments possess this knowledge. If USOs are indeed authentic, the oceans may not only be the dwelling grounds of advanced civilizations, but also a realm scrutinized by military entities across the globe. Navies serve as the custodians of this crucial information, diligently logging anomalies in sonar records and acoustic databases. Their reticence may arise from a desire to prevent public unrest, yet, in doing so, they simultaneously ensure that vital evidence remains obscured from the masses. The Cold War illustrated how imperative secrecy was. Both the United States and the Soviet Union were hesitant to concede that unknown entities were operating in territories where their nuclear submarines patrolled. In contemporary times, with Pentagon documents validating the existence of transmedium craft, sustaining silence has grown increasingly challenging. Nevertheless, the pattern of concealment persists. The most compelling interactions continue to rest under the veil of classification, tucked away in archives we may never have the privilege to access. It is clear that governments retain knowledge beyond their public admissions. They have tracked USOs, pursued them, and in many cases lost track of them entirely. They have witnessed the depths of the seas engulf crafts that should not exist within our current understanding, and they remain vigilant towards phenomena they cannot unravel. For ordinary citizens, the question lingers: will there ever be a moment of disclosure? The facts lie hidden within classified documents, military sonar records, and the recollections of personnel bound by silence. The ocean shelters the remaining mysteries, eyewitness accounts of crafts and entities. Amidst the sonar readings, classified documentation, and hydroacoustic enigmas, perhaps the most compelling evidence resides in the testimonies of those who have experienced the phenomena firsthand. Civilian fishermen, coastal inhabitants, military divers, and Navy aviators have all relayed encounters with crafts and beings that challenge rational explanation. Their narratives, despite their varied backgrounds, frequently resonate with one another. Reports of glowing orbs beneath the water's surface, disks vanishing into the depths, and even glimpses of humanoid figures in places where human presence seems improbable. Across the globe, fishermen and sailors have recounted sightings of iridescent objects gliding stealthily beneath their boats. In the waters surrounding Puerto Rico, numerous accounts from the 1970s and 1980s detail luminous orbs that appeared to ascend from the ocean's depths. Fishermen vividly remembered observing greenish or white spheres passing soundlessly underneath their vessels, casting an ethereal glow upon the water akin to searchlights. Some recounted the orbs ascending towards the surface, only to vanish in the blink of an eye, as if diving into an alternate dimension. Pilots flying over the same areas also recounted peculiarity. Smaller aircraft approaching San Juan or traversing the Caribbean coastline similarly described lights propelling upward from the ocean at astonishing speeds. On several occasions, radar confirmed these anomalies, showcasing movements far outpacing any recognized aircraft. These reports circulated among local residents and aviators for decades, embedding themselves within the lore of the trench recognized as a USO hotspot. Yet, the Puerto Rico Trench is far from singular in this regard. Off the California coast, fishermen in the Catalina Channel have shared tales of disks gliding soundlessly beneath the waves. Divers exploring the depths near Santa Catalina Island reported witnessing luminous objects darting far faster than any submarine, zipping across their line of sight before disappearing into the encroaching darkness. Analogous accounts have surfaced from Norway, Chile, and Japan, where glowing crafts inhabit profound waters, moving with intent yet devoid of sound. For civilians, such experiences are typically fleeting and disquieting. Without radar, sonar, or armaments, they are left in a passive state of observation as these entities maneuver silently around them. Reactions vary from awe to trepidation, but a common thread runs through all encounters: the unwavering certainty that what they witnessed transcended the ordinary, neither mere fish nor submarines, nor lights cast from the surface. Something inexplicable lingered just beneath their vessels. For naval personnel, these encounters bear even greater significance. Submarine sonar operators possess advanced training, capable of differentiating between whales and torpedoes, as well as geological disturbances and mechanical propulsion. When they report objects exceeding the size of aircraft carriers and traveling at hundreds of knots, their declarations carry substantial authority. Logs from the Cold War era document sonar locks on immense entities across both U.S. and Soviet submarines. One U.S. sonar technician later shared the experience of tracking a contact that appeared larger than an aircraft carrier, moving silently at speeds unmatched by any torpedo. The contact abruptly disappeared, leaving the crew in a state of disorientation. Similarly alarming reports emerged from Soviet submarines navigating Arctic realms, depicting fast-moving objects darting beneath ice sheets. In numerous instances, the official logs merely chronicled the anomalies without elucidation. Commanders often hesitated to speculate, Yet crew members frequently discuss these events in hushed voices. For men trained to meticulously identify every sound and contact within the ocean, recognize that such encounters were not mere lapses in judgment. They were irrefutable. One of the most unsettling accounts emerges from Lake Baikal in Siberia, the world's deepest freshwater lake. In 1982, a contingent of Soviet military divers engaged in a routine training mission encountered beings of humanoid form at a depth nearing 50 meters. These entities were described as almost 3 meters tall, adorned in tight-fitting silver suits and spherical helmets. Distinct from human divers, they bore no visible breathing apparatus. In an effort to capture one of these figures with nets, the beings reacted by propelling the divers abruptly toward the surface. This rapid ascent resulted in a tragic outcome, with 3 divers succumbing to decompression injuries and several others sustaining various injuries. The incident was swiftly classified, with official narratives attributing the divers' deaths to an accident. However, whispers among the ranks of the Soviet Navy circulated that they had stumbled upon evidence of a life form residing in the depths unseen by human eyes. When the files were partially declassified in 2009, the accounts validated what many had long suspected. Divers had, in fact, seen entities beyond human comprehension in one of the planet's most remote lakes. The United States Navy, for its part, possesses modern testimonies echoing similar phenomena. In 2004, off the California coast, pilots of the USS Nimitz encountered an object that would become widely known as the Tic Tac. Commander David Fravor articulated his description of a white oblong craft devoid of wings, exhaust, or visible means of propulsion. The object displayed prodigious maneuvers, plummeting tens of thousands of feet in mere seconds. On one occasion, it hovered just above the ocean's surface, agitating the water beneath, as if something was concealed below. When Fravor's aircraft moved in closer, the object accelerated with alarming speed, vanishing in an instant. Radar operators corroborated that the craft reappeared just 60 meters away in less than a minute. Subsequently, several members of the Navy reported unambiguously witnessing the Tic Tac entering the ocean and disappearing from sensor detection upon submersion. Recovery operations conducted by the ships within the strike group produced no remnants, no debris, and nothing to indicate a traditional crash. This event, substantiated by radar, eyewitness pilots, and video footage, stands as one of the most credible encounters recorded to date. For those who experience such occurrences, the psychological ramifications are significant. Fishermen frequently express a sense of fear, a feeling that something immense and powerful silently traversed the depths below them. Pilots and sailors share a sense of amazement at the displayed technology, coupled with an unsettling awareness of their own vulnerability. Submariners trained in the management of nuclear weaponry have confided, away from the public eye, that they felt like children in the presence of something far more advanced. The veil of secrecy only intensifies the impact. A multitude of witnesses remain prohibited from sharing their experiences, their accounts buried within compartments of classified documentation. Ordinary civilians, fearing skepticism, often choose to remain silent. When testimonies do surface, they are frequently dismissed as misperceptions, illusions, or mere folklore. Nonetheless, the similarities in the accounts across decades and across the globe remain striking. Glowing orbs, disc-shaped crafts, humanoid figures, and impossible velocities populate the narratives. Skeptics assert that eyewitness accounts lack reliability, memory can falter, perception can mislead. Yet, in the realm of unidentified submerged objects, the congruity across diverse witnesses, fishermen, divers, pilots, sonar technicians, bolsters the case for authenticity. When men adept at sonar interpretation articulate their observations of swift movements, when seasoned pilots give chase to crafts that vanish into the sea, when divers risk their safety to recount encounters with non-human entities, their observations merit serious consideration. Moreover, such testimony serves to humanize the phenomenon itself. Instruments may capture anomalies, but it is individuals who communicate the emotional resonance of their experiences. The awe, The trepidation, the stark realization that something unknown lurks within the depths. Their accounts remind us that this is not merely a subject for academic inquiry, but a real and lived experience, often concealed, yet never entirely obliterated. Collectively, these testimonies draw a discernible pattern. Civilian observers speak of glowing objects gliding beneath the waves. Naval personnel track significant, fast-moving entities on sonar systems. Divers at Lake Baikal have reported humanoid figures in an environment hostile to human beings. Pilots serving in the most technologically advanced Navy have noted crafts disappearing into the ocean without leaving a trace. The alignment of these patterns with broader evidence is compelling. If civilizations do exist within the oceans, one would reasonably expect to encounter crafts, bases, and possibly even the beings themselves from time to time. Rarely, briefly, but sufficient to serve as a reminder of their presence. For decades, witnesses have conveyed their stories, often softly spoken, sometimes documented in official records, and occasionally shared publicly. While the specifics of each tale may differ, the core essence remains constant. A presence that is intelligent, powerful, and non-human has been observed beneath the seas, and those fortunate or unfortunate enough to witness it, whether they be fishermen or fighter pilots, have continued to carry those memories forward, embedded in their consciousness. Soviet and Russian unidentified submerged object files. During the era of the Cold War, the Soviet Union operated one of the world's largest naval forces. Submarines roamed the Arctic, the Pacific, and the Black Sea, tasked with shadowing NATO vessels while safeguarding the USSR's nuclear arsenal. In this fraught environment, every sonar reading held significance. It was during this period that Soviet crews began relaying encounters with objects that defied explanation by known enemy technology. For decades, these reports languished within classified archives. It was not until 2009, when fragments of the Soviet Navy's secret documents were leaked via veterans and defense insiders, that the public caught a glimpse of how seriously Moscow once approached unidentified submerged objects. In the 1970s, Admiral Nikolai Smirnov, who served as the chief of the Soviet Navy, received a copious number of anomalous reports from submarines. In response, he issued a formal directive to investigate the phenomenon. Smirnov was no seer. Rather, he was a committed officer managing fleets armed with nuclear capabilities at the height of Cold War tensions. If his commanders reported that submarines were being tracked by unidentified crafts, he could not dismiss the implication that NATO had made groundbreaking advancements in propulsion technology. Soviet submarines were ordered to meticulously record every unexplained sonar contact. Crews detailed sightings of unidentified objects traversing at speeds between 200 to 300 knots, exceeding the bounds of human engineering. Some were seen diving beneath ice caps, moving in straight lines only to vanish without a trace. Others executed maneuvers so improbable that sonar technicians suspected their equipment had malfunctioned. But the contacts persisted, with multiple vessels documenting the same phenomena. The Arctic Ocean emerged as one of the most bustling arenas for unidentified submerged object encounters. Submarines from the Northern Fleet, stationed near the Kola Peninsula, consistently reported swift-moving entities beneath the ice. On numerous occasions, sonar systems tracked objects maneuvering right under the polar ice caps, maintaining speeds for hundreds of kilometers without any sign of slowing down. In a striking incident during the 1970s, a Soviet submarine reported 3 separate unidentified objects rapidly maneuvering around it. The commander assumed that NATO attack submarines were on a hunting mission against them, yet the speeds captured by sonar were beyond the capabilities of any known vessel. When these contacts suddenly ascended through the ice and vanished, the crew was left in a state of disbelief. Veterans often reminisced about the eerie quietness surrounding these encounters. Unlike human-operated submarines, which generate a distinct cavitation noise, the unidentified objects moved in complete silence. The only evidence was the sonar feedback, significant, solid, rapid, and utterly inexplicable. Not all of these experiences were restricted to open waters. The Caspian Sea, landlocked between Russia and Iran, also yielded peculiar reports. Soviet naval patrols recounted sightings of luminous spheres ascending from the depths, occasionally hovering above the surface before shooting upwards into the sky. Radar operators corroborated these contacts, yet not a single conventional aircraft was present in the vicinity. The Caspian incidents hold significance as the sea is relatively shallow compared to the vast ocean, allowing little room for concealment. Yet, Soviet crews continued to provide accounts of glowing phenomena navigating beneath and above its surface. If the same entities were active in the Caspian as in the Arctic, it suggests that this phenomenon was not confined to the remote depths, but extended into heavily monitored inland seas. One of the most remarkable encounters transpired in 1976 amid a Pacific Fleet patrol. A Soviet submarine reported being tailed by multiple unknown objects swimming beneath the water. These contacts appeared abruptly, encircling the vessel and mirroring its maneuvers. Concerned about a potential collision or attack, the commander commanded the submarine to surface. Once it broke through to the surface, the contacts vanished without a trace. The incident was so unsettling that officers filed specialized reports up the chain of command, cautioning that the objects exhibited intelligence and deliberate control. Officially, the event was catalogued as anomalous contacts of unknown origins. Unofficially, sailors muttered that they had been compelled to the surface by non-human forces. The involvement of the Soviet Navy expanded beyond turbulent oceans and seas into the realms of inland lakes. Lake Baikal, renowned as the world's deepest freshwater source, gained notoriety following a tragic incident involving military divers in 1982. These divers encountered humanoid beings lurking at depth, described as 3 meters tall and adorned in silvery suits with helmet-like headgear. When attempts were made to apprehend one of the beings, they repelled the divers, causing a rapid ascent. 3 divers succumbed to decompression sickness as a result. Although this case frequently circulates in UFO literature, Soviet records affirm that an incident of tragedy did indeed occur. The official Navy report attributed the event to a training accident, but classified notes suggested an encounter with unknown entities. Among veterans, the Baikal incident remains one of the most haunting experiences from the Cold War era. Following the dissolution of the USSR in 1991, Russian officers and divers began to express themselves more freely. Some spoke of anomalies in barren seas, of rapid contacts tracked on sonar during standard patrols. Others recounted glowing objects in the Black Sea ascending from below during military exercises. One former submarine officer confided to Russian media that his crew had repeatedly tracked objects larger than destroyer-class vessels moving silently at speeds unreachable by any American submarine. Another diver recounted an experience of approaching a glowing structure on the seabed, only for his instruments to malfunction until he felt compelled to retreat. These testimonials, though anecdotal, resonate with the official files leaked in 2009. They imply that the phenomenon did not conclude with the Soviet Union's demise, but persists in contemporary Russian waters. The enduring question remains: why did the Soviet Union choose to remain silent? The answer lies nestled within the logic of the Cold War. Acknowledging the presence of unidentified vessels in territorial waters would equate to admitting vulnerability. The Navy could not ensure the safety of its own patrol zones. Officials were further apprehensive that if the public came to believe in non-human technology, it could incite panic and destabilize the already fragile confidence in the government. Consequently, the documents were classified, sequestered from all but the upper echelons of command. Encounters were rationalized as natural occurrences or equipment failures. The human elements, terrified divers, startled sonar technicians, commanders compelled to surface, were expunged from the public narrative. By the year 2009, however, veterans began to feel increasingly liberated to share their experiences. The shroud of Cold War secrecy had begun to fade, and the Russian Navy itself confronted challenges regarding funding and morale. Retired officers initiated the leaking of documents to journalists, framing them not as conclusive evidence of extraterrestrial life, but as enigmas worthy of exploration. Defense insiders verified the existence of these files, though many remained incomplete and securely locked in archives. The revelations confirmed what many had already suspected, that the Soviet Navy, parallel to its American counterpart, had discreetly chronicled a phenomenon it could not control. And despite decades of silence, the pattern stood out with unmistakable clarity. Across Arctic encounters, Caspian incidents, Pacific pursuits, and Lake Baikal tragedies, Soviet documents delineate the same remarkable elements. Craft racing at unbelievable velocities, glowing spheres emerging from the aquatic realm, humanoid beings interacted with in areas deemed uninhabitable for humans. These were not mere isolated anomalies, but recurrent events observed by trained military professionals. For the USSR, these encounters represented evidence of a force beyond human comprehension lurking beneath the seas, something that transcended known technological capabilities. For us, they serve as poignant reminders that the depths of our oceans may already harbor civilizations that remain only partially understood. Science, skepticism, and debate. Each time unexplained incidents arise at sea, whether relayed by fishermen, sonar operators, or Navy aviators, science urges a temperate approach. Conventional explanations typically dominate initial analyses. Sonar malfunctions, marine fauna, or geological disturbances often headline these rationalizations. Sonar equipment is indeed intricate and can be highly sensitive to variations in the environment. Temperature discrepancies with layers of warm and cold water can bend sound waves. Underwater ridges may distort echoes, while multiple reflections can generate phantom returns that might be misinterpreted as moving objects. Consequently, sonar operators may misread certain noises as material contact. The field of marine biology introduces further potential explanations. Gigantic whales, schools of fish, or bioluminescent organisms can sometimes produce anomalous signatures that defy understanding. For example, a gathering of squid emitting bioluminescence beneath a boat may create the illusion of a luminous craft to an observer above. Similarly, methane eruptions from the ocean floor, which are known occurrences in specific locales, have the potential to disrupt water columns, sink vessels, or create sonar anomalies that resemble an object's presence. Geologists examining the infamous Bermuda Triangle have often suggested these methane eruptions as possible rationales for mysterious sinkings. Yet, when placed alongside the detailed accounts of numerous USO experiences, these conventional explanations falter. The most apparent challenge lies in their velocity. Neither whales, squid, nor even the swiftest fish can travel in straight trajectories at 200 to 300 knots. Although methane bursts may disrupt underwater structures, they do not produce coherent maneuvers that signify intelligent action. While sonar glitches may generate deceptive echoes, they cannot clarify instances where sonar detections received visual confirmation or where several vessels simultaneously tracked the same entity. Recurring reports document objects executing sharp turns, encircling submarines, or vanishing without a trace, behaviors indicating intelligence at play. The Soviet Navy reported sightings of objects diving beneath polar ice caps, only to resurface miles away. U.S. pilots recorded crafts plunging into the ocean, yet leaving the surface undisturbed. These occurrences are not isolated, but rather they form intricate patterns that stretch across decades and continents. The implication is clear: the phenomenon appears to involve technologies functioning beyond the scope of known physics. Researchers and physicists have ventured to theorize about how such astounding maneuvers could be feasible. One proposition suggests that a craft could create a plasma sheath, an encompassing bubble of ionized particles that lowers drag and modifies sound wave interactions. Experiments in plasma aerodynamics have demonstrated reductions in air resistance. In an aquatic environment, the effect might be even more significant. A bolder hypothesis posits propulsion through gravitational manipulation. If a vessel were capable of bending its surroundings locally, it would not traverse the water in any conventional manner. Instead, it would carry its own space bubble, thus making the surrounding medium irrelevant. Witnesses might perceive it gliding effortlessly, plunging into the ocean without generating a splash, or executing right-angle turns at astonishing velocities. While this concept remains speculative, it dovetails with the descriptions of crafts seamlessly entering and exiting water, seemingly disregarding the barrier between air and sea. Recently, the U.S. Department of Defense has cautiously validated such possibilities. Officers investigating unidentified aerial phenomena have categorized certain objects as transmedium, capable of traversing multiple environments without visible transition. Although they refrain from categorizing this as alien technology, their acknowledgement reflects an understanding that something is challenging conventional explanations. Experts outside of military circles have weighed in with various degrees of caution. Oceanographers remind us that the ocean is the least explored frontier on Earth. Over 80% of the ocean floor remains unmapped in detail, while enigmatic acoustic phenomena like the Bloop, Julia, and upsweep are still unresolved enigmas. While such facts do not conclusively prove the existence of advanced civilizations, they highlight our profound ignorance about the mysteries lurking beneath the waves. In contrast, physicists take a firmer stance. They assert that the energy demands for a submarine to reach such speeds underwater would be monumental, far exceeding any current human capacities. If the reports hold true, they argue, the technology involved must involve principles beyond present engineering. Michio Kaku has posited that encounters with UFOs and USOs may provide fleeting insights into civilizations that have perfected technologies linked to a second type of civilization on the Kardashev scale, one capable of harnessing energy on the scale of entire planetary or stellar systems. Meanwhile, military analysts typically focus less on theoretical physics and more on pragmatic security concerns. For them, the challenge arises straightforwardly. Unidentified craft operating within national waters create a potential threat irrespective of their origin. If unknown objects can trail submarines, breach defense perimeters, and disappear at will, then navies find themselves defenseless against such phenomena. From this standpoint, the USO phenomenon transcends the realm of science fiction. It becomes fundamentally about vulnerability. The discourse remains starkly divided. Skeptics argue that without tangible evidence, everything remains mere speculation. They underscore the fallibility of human perception and warn against interpreting myths or anomalies as indications of extraterrestrial interaction. Nevertheless, counterarguments assert that the consistency of these encounters across multiple nations and decades is not easily dismissed. The United States, the Soviet Union, and currently both contemporary Russian and Chinese navies have documented the same peculiarities. Sonar tracks of rapid entities, glowing crafts beneath ocean surfaces, and objects transitioning effortlessly between air and water have been reported. The absence of physical debris continues to pose a challenge. Yet again, the nature of the phenomenon may clarify this issue. If these crafts indeed utilize technologies that nullify drag, create protective shields, or manipulate gravitational forces, then it may be unrealistic to expect them to produce wreckage akin to that of a conventional submarine. Their very architecture may inherently preclude the formation of recognizable evidence. Skepticism remains paramount. History abounds with erroneous deductions born of insufficient evidence. Once dismissed as mere superstition, meteorites are now understood as remnants of our solar system. Concepts such as deep ocean hydrothermal vents, once considered impossible, have transformed into known ecosystems teeming with life. Each scientific breakthrough began as an anomaly initially cast aside by experts. The unexplained phenomena surrounding unidentified submerged objects may one day find clarity through advancements in geology, biology, or physics. However, to categorically reject this phenomenon is to risk neglecting evidence pointing to something genuinely extraordinary. The lingering question is both simple and profound. What velocities are slicing through our oceans, eluding detection while occasionally presenting themselves to human witnesses? While natural explanations succeed in accounting for some incidents, they do not encompass the entirety of the evidence. Physics offers various conceivable mechanisms, but lacks proven technologies to back them. The testimonies of sailors, divers, and pilots impart a human element to this enigma. At present, the discourse remains unresolved. Skeptics adhere firmly to explanations grounded in conventional logic, while proponents highlight the compelling nature of advanced intelligent craft. Between them lies the ocean itself, silent and expansive. It withholds the answers we seek. Whether these anomalies reveal misunderstood natural phenomena or serve as glimpses into civilizations inconspicuously dwelling beneath the waves, one undeniable truth exists. The realm of science has yet to fully comprehend what naval forces have observed for decades. Centers on the hypothesis surrounding alien intentions. If reports concerning unidentified submerged objects indeed hold veracity, and if crafts are traversing our oceans at incredible speeds while beings are glimpsed in environments inhospitable to humans, a singular question emerges above all. Why? What could motivate advanced civilizations to operate beneath the surface of Earth's seas? Perspectives vary from the practical to the philosophical. Some theorize surveillance, others propose resource extraction, while still others suggest a role that borders on custodianship. A more speculative notion posits that the oceans may harbor gateways to other dimensions or serve as sanctuaries for civilizations predating humanity. Each theory illuminates why our planet's most significant frontier might concurrently be its most densely populated. The most straightforward, yet profoundly unsettling, motive is observation. Our species may have been under quiet surveillance for centuries. If advanced civilizations wished to monitor humanity without interaction, the oceans would provide an unparalleled vantage point. From those depths, crafts could ascend silently, surveying coastal metropolises, military maneuvers, or nuclear sites, then disappear just as swiftly. The clustering of unidentified submerged object reports near highly strategic locations, such as the Puerto Rico Trench adjacent to United States naval operations or the Arctic waters close to Soviet nuclear undertakings, bolsters the idea that monitoring is a prime objective. Much like humans establish research stations in Antarctica to study ecosystems and climatic changes, an extraterrestrial civilization could leverage oceans as neutral territory, embedding hidden bases to observe our technological and societal progressions. Their silence could be a calculated choice, allowing them to watch without intervention, at least in obvious terms. Another potential motive could be resource extraction. The ocean depths are rich with rare earth minerals, methane hydrates, and expansive geothermal energy reserves, resources we are only beginning to tap effectively. An advanced civilization would find it straightforward to exploit what lies beneath. For instance, the mineral-rich hydrothermal vents along the Pacific Ridge are home to deposits of gold, cobalt, and other rare elements crucial for advanced technological applications. Deep-sea trenches likely conceal significant concentrations of rare earth elements, essential for energy and technological advancements. Should extraterrestrials seek such materials, the oceans provide a vast and largely unprotected treasure trove. Some accounts suggest this behavior may indeed be occurring. Soviet divers have recounted luminous formations on the seabed, indicating the existence of machinery embedded within the geological strata. Fishermen in Puerto Rico have reported sightings of glowing objects hovering just above the trench floor. Could these narratives reflect activities of mining or harvesting? Here, the motive may not be conquest or surveillance, but practical resource extraction. Earth's oceans might be perceived merely as sites of commodity wealth by civilizations whose technological capabilities elude our understanding. For us, their operations may appear miraculous. For them, the processes might simply be routine. A more optimistic line of thought is one of guardianship, proposing that advanced civilizations operate within our oceans not for selfish gains, but to protect Earth itself. Certain researchers highlight instances where unidentified flying objects, and unidentified submerged objects appear in the vicinity of nuclear facilities or during military tests. Pilots from the USS Nimitz in 2004 described observing a Tic Tac object hovering above waters, agitated as if something submerged were watching them. Similarly, Soviet submariners have recounted encounters with unknown entities interfering in missile tests. Were these merely coincidental meetups, or did they signal a form of oversight? The seas represent a cradle for Earth's ecosystems, regulating climate, producing oxygen, and sustaining life across continents. Should a civilization take an interest in preventing ecological devastation out of either benevolence or self-preservation, overseeing the oceans would be of utmost necessity. Their interventions might be subtle nudges facilitating humanity's avoidance of catastrophe without revealing their presence. This interpretation positions unidentified submerged objects not as potential aggressors, but as guardians, cautiously ensuring that Earth remains habitable for all its inhabitants, ourselves included. Some hypotheses venture beyond the material domain, suggesting the oceans could function as gateways to alternate dimensions or realms of existence. Deep-seated trenches that plunge miles into the depths may serve as natural portals where the fabric of space-time thins. The Mariana Trench, the Puerto Rico Trench, and Lake Baikal frequently emerge in discussions surrounding unidentified submerged object sightings. Witness accounts narrate tales of objects vanishing into the depths as if crossing into another realm. Could it be that these enigmatic locations serve not merely as hiding spots, but as portals? This could illuminate why craft seemingly materialize from the ocean only to vanish in an instant. What appears to us as a feat beyond comprehension might, in reality, signify a shift across dimensions. The oceans, rather than being mere habitats, might act as thresholds to other realities. While this notion leans heavily on speculation, it finds resonance in the rich tapestry of myths woven across different cultures. In Polynesian tradition, for instance, star canoes bridge the gap between sky and sea. Similarly, Native American stories recount entities emerging from the profound waters beneath the Earth's surface. Tales from Mesopotamia spoke of figures known as Oans, who ascended from the Persian Gulf to impart wisdom to humanity. These narratives may hint at encounters with visitors who traverse the oceans as a passage between realms. Perhaps the most compelling reason assumes a sense of survival. Our planet, having existed for approximately 4.5 billion years, has seen modern humans inhabit its surface for less than 300,000 years. Should there have been advanced civilizations on Earth long before our time, it stands to reason they might have sought refuge beneath the ocean's waves to survive cataclysmic events that have repeatedly ravaged the land. Floods, asteroid collisions, ice ages, and volcanic upheavals have systematically eliminated terrestrial life. Choosing the ocean as their sanctuary could have allowed one such civilization to persevere through these calamities, existing in obscurity while land-dwelling species underwent cycles of rise and fall. The legends of Atlantis and Lemuria may serve as fragmented memories, whispers of times when humans caught fleeting glimpses of those who embraced the sea as their sanctuary. This line of thought reframes our narrative, suggesting we are not visitors from another world but ultra-terrestrials, existing beings native to Earth whose histories far predate our own, yet persist in a domain beyond our comprehension. Their motivations would seem less inclined toward conquest or mere observation, and more aligned with the pursuit of continuity. In this dynamic, we emerge as the recent arrivals, oblivious to the reality that the planet we regard as solely our own has long been shared with other intelligences. Every hypothesis carries a degree of validity. The clustering of sightings near military facilities may signal surveillance, while the wealth found in oceanic resources aligns with resource extraction. Encounters occurring near nuclear testing zones might suggest a protective role, while the theory of interdimensional gateways accounts for swift disappearances. Lost pre-human civilizations could very well explain the mythological echoes of ancient realms. Thus, it is plausible that the truth is not confined to a singular motive, Rather, multiple civilizations might simultaneously engage in observation, extraction, and guardianship, each driven by distinct purposes. What consistently unifies all reports is the unmistakable evidence of advanced operations beneath the waves. The paramount implication of these considerations is the acknowledgement that humanity does not possess the exclusive mantle of intelligence on Earth. Whether these beings originate from the cosmos, alternate dimensions, or our own planet's extensive past, it appears they have chosen the depths of the oceans as their domain. Their existence compels us to reevaluate our assumptions concerning solitude, supremacy, and survival. Throughout the ages, we have gazed upward into the heavens in search of answers. Yet, the mounting evidence suggests we ought to divert our gaze downward into the abyss that envelops the majority of our globe. What we perceive as the ocean may transcend mere water, currents, and geological formations. It could represent a vibrant frontier inhabited by intelligences considerably older, wiser, and more adept than ourselves. Until such beings choose to unveil their presence, if they ever do at all, we remain ensnared with mere fragments, sonar readings, luminous orbs, diver accounts, and the narratives of those who bore witness to phenomena defying explanation. From these elusive snippets, we are compelled to theorize about their intentions. And while such speculation carries an air of uncertainty, it nevertheless embodies a possibility too profound to disregard, one where civilizations may already reside beneath the waves, pursuing purposes that remain largely beyond our imagination. A closing reflection. The ocean has forever been the cradle of life itself. Every terrestrial species, including humans, finds a lineage tracing back to the sea. It stands as our oldest sanctuary and, in many respects, our most enigmatic frontier. Despite our remarkable advances in the realm of space exploration, we remain less informed about the ocean's unlit depths than we are about the surface of Mars. The oceans have birthed legends of submerged civilizations, witnessed contemporary accounts of unidentified crafts, and concealed enigmas that elude explanation. Should a repository of answers to the UFO enigma reside on Earth, it may well be beneath the waves. The oceans serve not only as a physical barrier, but also as a veil of secrecy, cloaking whatever maneuvers within them, shielding it from our satellites, probes, and insatiable curiosity. For centuries, the tales of radiant beings emerging from the waves, of cities engulfed by the sea, and of deities arising from the depths to share knowledge with humanity have persisted. In recent years, advancements in sonar, radar, and the observations of skilled military personnel have unveiled crafts that exhibit remarkable velocities, enigmatic luminous orbs, and vessels that transition seamlessly between air and water, as if no boundaries exist. The continuity between ancient myth and modern testimony is challenging to dismiss. Humanity now finds itself at a pivotal juncture, poised on the threshold of exploring both the cosmos above and the ocean depths below. Yet our tools remain constrained. The exploration of the deep sea is still sporadic, costly, and perilous. Extensive sections of the seafloor remain unmapped. If an advanced civilization sought concealment from us, there exists no better sanctuary than beneath the crushing pressure of several miles, within trenches where light has never penetrated, and where our instruments only skim the surface. Thus, the inquiry extends beyond the mere existence of alien civilizations to pondering whether they have already embraced the oceans as their haven. If indeed they have, their motivations may be shrouded in mystery, whether for observation, resource acquisition, guardianship, or merely for survival. It becomes increasingly evident that our world might be less solitary than we assume. The notion that we are the only sentient presence on Earth grows increasingly tenuous with every unexplained sonar reading, every luminous entity tracked on radar, every diver's account of beings glimpsed in unfathomable depths. For numerous decades, the narrative continues to unfold. Search for extraterrestrial life has traditionally drawn our gaze skyward, urging us to peer into the vast cosmos and explore the numerous twinkling stars. Radio telescopes diligently sweep the heavens, while spacecraft venture far beyond the bounds of our solar system, all in pursuit of any indication of intelligent life that may exist beyond our own galaxy. Yet, could it be that the first revelation will not descend from the lofty firmament? Perhaps it will rise quietly from the deeps of our oceans, from domains we have yet to explore, where civilizations may silently flourish, hidden from human eyes. The ocean is far from desolate. It pulses with vitality. It holds immense power, and it might be inhabited in manners we are only beginning to comprehend. Should the phenomena associated with unidentified submerged objects indeed indicate the presence of actual crafts and beings, then we share this planet with others who have long since mastered its harshest environments. These entities may have inhabited our world long before we did, and they may still be observing us from their watery domains. This prospect is as exhilarating as it is disquieting. For centuries, humanity has fixated on the sky, searching for the unfamiliar. However, the most profound revelation of all might be lurking beneath the surface in those silent depths covering the majority of our planet. The disclosure we yearn for, the validation that we are not solitary in the universe, may not be heralded from the celestial sphere, but rather could emerge from the oceans. If you remain alert, rest assured that more awaits. A series of strange and rare accounts is on the horizon, each one subtler and more peculiar than its predecessor. The first story leads us to the Kashgar object in 1983 in the Xinjiang province of China. A singular unadorned dot glided across the radar screen, quiet, unwavering, and simply incorrect. As the clock in the Kashgar Air Defense Command ticked to 0 hours and 13 minutes on the 3rd of August, 1983, junior radar operator Lo John cleared his workspace of dust on the green cathode screen and leaned closer. Ordinarily, the nights were devoid of excitement, long hours spent sweeping over the barren western frontier. Yet this signal was distinctly different. It neither blinked nor wobbled. It lacked the accompaniment of a transponder code or the trailing shadows of typical aircraft. It simply manifested, slicing eastward over the Pamir foothills with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel and the silence of a phantom. There was no sonic boom, no thermal signature, nor visual confirmation through the scope. Lou's gaze shifted to his supervisor, who was already reaching for the red receiver. While the radar signature appeared modest, its velocity and unerring trajectory far surpassed that of any weather balloon or migratory bird. It had crossed into restricted airspace near the Soviet border, a region where any untethered incursion is considered a threat. Merely 6 minutes elapsed before the scramble siren pierced the night air. In the ensuing moments, the skies above western China roared to life with the roar of jet engines and the whir of search radar. 2 fighters launched into the night, heading toward an interception that would challenge all known principles of aviation and remain officially dismissed for decades to follow. By 0 hours and 19 minutes, the first interceptors, a pair of Shenyang J-6, had taken to the skies. Pilots Major Wei Ren and Lieutenant Zhou Gi were guided northeast by ground control with the goal of identifying and shadowing the enigmatic object. Initial radar readouts placed the bogey at 11,000 meters, moving at just below supersonic speed. However, by the time the fighters reached the vicinity, the unidentified object had ascended to 20,000 meters in less than 30 seconds. The pilots were left astounded. No aircraft could achieve such an ascent, Wei relayed over the communications channel. Yet their visual confirmation eluded them, leaving only radar locks without any physical presence. Then, in a bewildering twist, both jets experienced a total radar and electronic blackout for a full 10 seconds. Zhou endured an instrument failure, while their headsets erupted with high-frequency static. When the system rebooted, the object had vanished from their local airspace. Then, as if it were a mere trick of perception, it re-emerged 90 kilometers to the east. The chase had concluded. The object had outpaced, outmaneuvered, and outclassed the J-6s at every juncture, continuing eastward for another 14 minutes before disappearing over the Kun Mountains. Back at the ground command, a tempest of discussions erupted. The Urumqi Regional Air Command convened an emergency session. Colonel Jiang Ming and his radar technicians meticulously reviewed printouts, telemetry, and signal logs, each metric revealing velocities, altitudes, and directional shifts that violated the known standards of aviation. Jiang insisted that the unusual activity be reported directly to the Central Military Commission in Beijing, though the wording was intentionally vague. The term UFO was deliberately omitted. Instead, they referred to it as an aerial vehicle of unknown origin exhibiting advanced non-ballistic motion. Within internal discussions, suspicions bubbled to the surface. Some attributed the events to the Americans, referencing rumored variants of the SR-71. Others speculated that it could be Soviet technology. Still, analysts swiftly dismissed both possibilities. There were no engine signatures to analyze, no sonic booms to record, no thermal traces to follow. The object had exhibited the ability to hover, accelerate, reverse its course, and climb at speeds exceeding those of any known aircraft. Even theoretical hypersonics could not account for such performance. In less than 24 hours, all radar logs were classified. Pilots were reassigned and instructed to remain silent about the incident. Then came the denial. 3 weeks subsequent to the event, the Ministry of National Defense issued a bland public statement clarifying that no unauthorized incursions or military engagements transpired in the Western Air Defense Corridor that August. Radar training simulations had, according to official lines, been mistakenly registered as unidentified objects. Yet something far more significant lay beneath the surface. The meeting in Urumqi that followed transcended mere briefing. It was a pivotal reckoning. Translations of transcripts later extracted from dissident archives revealed the charged atmosphere in the room, tense, incredulous, and increasingly speculative. Colonel Jiang allegedly slammed the printout of the radar tracking data onto the table, declaring that no machine moved like the one they observed, not even the Americans. His aide, Captain Lin, countered with the only plausible explanation that adhered to the known laws of physics. We did not fail to intercept it. It permitted us the attempt. Brigadier General Sunbo, dispatched from Beijing following the initial reports, contributed an additional layer of concern. There was an absence of defensive maneuvers from the object. It refrained from evasive action until the intercept commenced. In that moment, it adjusted with remarkable quickness. The concept of adaptive intelligence, whether artificial or organic, was proposed but swiftly ruled out in the official documentation. Yet, a handwritten note in the margins ominously inscribed AI probe. Outside the confines of the sealed conference room, speculation burgeoned among junior officers. Some theorized that the object had emerged from beyond the atmosphere, undertaking a controlled descent, before leveling off at an altitude of 11,000 meters. Others speculated its origins lay within China itself, perhaps as a clandestine test vehicle from an undisclosed region, though no official record substantiated such a hypothesis. A smaller, quieter faction entertained whispered notions that no one dared to commit to paper. It observed us. Several weeks post-incident, the Ministry of State Security discreetly approached the families of both pilots. They faced no inquiries, only reminders of their husbands' patriotism and the crucial nature of national secrecy. No outright threats were made, merely the unmistakable implication that silence came at the price of service. In the aftermath, both pilots received reassignment. Lieutenant Zhou transitioned to airbase logistics, while Major Wei took on a position in flight training. Neither was granted permission to publicly address the event, and both abided by this constraint. Nevertheless, interviews with family members decades later revealed that both men recounted that fateful night with a mixture of wonder and unease. Wei described the object not as a vehicle, but as an entity that seemed to anticipate their actions. As technology advanced over the years, the effort to elucidate the Kashgar object became increasingly intricate. Aerospace engineers in the early 2000s endeavored to simulate the object's movements employing theoretical propulsion systems, yet none accurately aligned with its behavior. An academic paper from the People's Liberation Army in 2010 proposed the existence of a transatmospheric glider equipped with plasma shielding. Still, that model failed to replicate the lateral acceleration or complete radar silence exhibited during the intercept. In 2022, satellite imaging data from a retired French specialist in geospatial analysis unveiled heat anomalies in the Pomeyer region from August 1983, revealing small directional bursts that possibly correlated with a high-energy atmospheric entry or rapid propulsion signature. While these findings remained inconclusive, they comported with the presumed trajectory of the Kashgar object. Once again, the official response was one of silence. However, researchers were undeterred. During a symposium in Moscow in 1995, former Soviet radar specialists confirmed they had independently tracked the same object briefly over Kazakhstani airspace, characterizing its movements as deliberate and intelligent, distinctly non-ballistic. When pressed on why their military refrained from engaging, one technician responded candidly, recognizing that they were already aware it would vanish. Today, Chinese airspace persists as one of the most meticulously monitored in the world. Nonetheless, the Kashgar object continues to haunt the outer realms of military history. Some people assert it was a rare anomaly. Others remain convinced it served as a test, not of aircraft or weaponry, but of response. What would occur if something arrived uninvited, undescribed, and unfathomable? The answer emerged clear. Denial, strategic, comprehensive, and spanning decades. Yet the records endure, the data exists, and the questions continue to smolder. How did an unmarked vehicle elude every defensive mechanism China possessed in 1983? What type of intelligence could infiltrate such a tightly guarded airspace, navigate it with such grace, and exit with pinpoint precision? And what, if anything, was its intent for entering in the first place? One former intelligence official, who opted to remain unnamed, articulated it succinctly. In 1983, we forfeited control of our skies for 28 minutes, and we still lack answers regarding who or what took it from us. In another instance, a police pursuit unfolded in 1970s Poland. An entry in the logbook at the Krakow militia station was terse yet startling. At 2,347 hours, patrol reported pursuing an unidentified aerial phenomenon, luminous and exhibiting spherical movements inconsistent with known aircraft. Radio interference was noted. Written in unadorned bureaucratic script, those words encapsulated one of the most bizarre chases recorded in Poland's annals. This occurrence transpired during an ordinary summer night in the mid-1970s. A police patrol car traversed the banks of the Vistula River, its headlights cutting through the sparsely populated streets. Just after midnight, the officers spotted a bright illumination suspended low above the rooftops. Initially, they assumed it might be a helicopter spotlight, perhaps deployed by the military or border guards, but no sound accompanied the light, which remained motionless amidst the stillness of the night sky. Then, with astonishing agility, the light moved. It plummeted toward the river, then darted eastward at a pace that left the officers astounded. Instinctively reacting, they initiated a pursuit, siren blaring, as they accelerated across the cobblestones. For the ensuing 30 minutes, the patrol chased the sphere through the southern districts of Krakow and into the surrounding rural areas. The object behaved as if it possessed awareness of its pursuers. Each time the patrol car gained ground, the sphere deftly repositioned itself, glowing with an intensity that illuminated their path. At one juncture, it hovered directly above a field, flooding the patrol car with a white light so brilliant that the officers instinctively shielded their eyes. In a sudden burst, it ascended skyward at an angle no known aircraft could achieve. The officers attempted to communicate with headquarters, yet their radio set filled with static. Dispatchers later confirmed a loss of contact for several minutes, restored only once the object moved away. This disruption was duly noted in the station's records, corroborating the patrol's assertion that the encounter had interfered with their equipment. Civilians also bore witness to the object. Residents of the Nowa Huta district reported seeing a glowing sphere darting above the factories that evening. A farmer residing outside the city later recounted to local authorities that his livestock panicked as a silent light hovered above his pasture. The convergence of testimony made the patrol's narrative challenging to disregard. By dawn, the case had been elevated to higher authorities. The regional police command in Kyiv forwarded the report to Warsaw, where such incidents were methodically recorded by the Ministry of Internal Affairs. At the same time, the Civil Aviation Office consulted with air traffic control regarding any scheduled flights in that vicinity. There were none. No radar signals corresponded with the patrol's account. However, a military radar installation situated outside Kyiv had registered an unidentified target navigating erratically during the same time frame. This revelation prompted the Polish Air Defense Forces, who were tasked with overseeing the heavily trafficked skies over Warsaw, to take an interest. Subsequent accounts indicated that the Air Defense Command categorized the occurrence as an aerial anomaly. No interceptors were deployed, as the object had already disappeared, but the radar echo was sufficiently credible for the officers to treat it with seriousness. A retired operator candidly remarked that it was not mere clutter. The return was robust and persistent. It accelerated beyond the capability of their tracking systems. Despite this corroboration, the authorities refrained from issuing any public declarations. Poland, during the 1970s, was under communist governance, and UFO reports were approached with caution, often suppressed to prevent public panic or mockery. Nevertheless, within police circles in Kyiv, the incident gained notoriety. The two officers who initially documented the sighting were viewed as dependable individuals, lacking any history of embellishment. Their colleagues privately conceded that they had witnessed something extraordinary. Skeptics later posited that the patrol had misidentified a weather balloon, a helicopter, or perhaps even the planet Venus. Yet these hypotheses failed to account for the abrupt accelerations, the hovering, the disruption of police radios, or the radar validation. Weather balloons drift slowly and helicopters generate noise, while planets do not plummet toward rivers, only to vanish into clouds. For researchers, the Kyiv police pursuit evolved into a classic close encounter of the first kind, marked by a sighting at close range with multiple witnesses, institutional records, and supportive evidence. It distinguished itself not only due to the chase, but also because authorities, police, aviation, and military, were compelled to acknowledge that an inexplicable event had transpired. Over the years, the officers who submitted the report remained steadfast in their accounts. Even in retirement, they spoke of the same glowing orb, the same pursuit, and the same equipment malfunction. They admitted to feelings of fear, describing the chase as futile, yet they insisted it was very much real. One officer noted that they were trained to discern between aircraft and imagination, asserting that on that night they encountered something no training could elucidate. The incident also aligned with a broader trend. Throughout the 1970s, Poland reported numerous UFO encounters. In Gdynia, witnesses observed disks entering the harbor, while air traffic controllers near Warsaw tracked unfamiliar returns. Across the countryside, farmers recounted disturbances among their livestock caused by lights hovering in the sky. The Kyiv chase was far from isolated. It formed part of a wave of sightings across Eastern Europe during that decade. Today, Kyiv has evolved into a vibrant city filled with tourism, universities, and restored heritage. Few strolling along the Wisła at night are aware of the patrol car that once sped along its banks in pursuit of a silent orb. Yet within archives and personal records, the memory survives. It is remembered not as folklore, but rather as a puzzling mystery supported by logs and radar tapes that faded into official silence. The Kyiv police pursuit remains an enigma. It was neither clutter, nor an atmospheric illusion, nor a conventional aircraft. It was tracked by radar, reported by civilians, and chased by officers whose duty logs still bear testament to the event. For the city, it was a night when law enforcement confronted the unknown and found themselves outpaced by forces surpassing human technology. The Lotho Air Force Base incident, occurring in September 1995 at Maseru, Lesotho. The guard at Maya Medellana Air Base shifted his rifle on his shoulder while attempting to rub warmth back into his hands. The night enveloped the base in tranquility, with crickets filling the grass beyond the fence and a dog barking somewhere in the hills outside Maseru. Habitually scanning the perimeter, he raised his gaze toward the sky. That was when he noticed it. A luminous sphere hovered above the restricted zone of the base. It radiated steadily, its surface pulsing gently with a whitish gold glow that seemed to breathe. Initially, he speculated it might be a South African helicopter inadvertently crossing the border. But there was no engine sound, no rotor wash, and not a hint of vibration in the still air. The night's silence remained unbroken, intensifying the aura of the sight. He alerted the next sentry, and together they stood rigid, transfixed as the light slid sideways, gliding with a smoothness unattainable by any flare or lantern. Then, almost nonchalantly, a second orb emerged beside it. Moments later, a third orb appeared. The trio collectively formed a triangle above the runways, as if they had suddenly taken an interest in the base itself. The guards stiffened. The aircraft lined the hangars below, constituting the sole air wing of Lotho, small in numbers yet crucial in function. Nothing should have been present without proper clearance. One guard radioed the barracks. Within moments, officers appeared, equipped with binoculars. They raised the lenses to their eyes, glanced skyward, and fell into silence. The three spheres pulsed gently, their illumination rising and dimming in rhythm, resembling a heartbeat. At times, one orb drifted ahead, only for the others to flawlessly follow suit. Then, all three froze, suspended motionless against the night sky. For men trained to decipher aircraft movements, the precision was unmistakable. These were not meteors, flares, or drifting lanterns. They maintained formation with purpose. Witnesses later estimated each orb measured between 1 and 2 meters in diameter. The light, although not blinding, was sufficient to cast a pale white glow over the concrete runway. The hangar doors reflected faintly, with one mechanic noting that the illumination was vibrant enough to cause his tools to gleam as though illuminated by a lamp. Then came the descent. An astonishing sight as two of the orbs gracefully lowered, hovering barely 100 meters above the ground. Their glow brightened, compelling some guards to shield their eyes from the brilliance. An officer murmured that it felt as if the lights were systematically scanning the base, scrutinizing every structure, every soldier. From the rolling hills surrounding Maseru, civilians were transfixed too. Farmers who were tending to their late herds pointed skyward. Families gathered outside their homes initially mistook the luminous objects for distant stars until they witnessed them reorganizing into distinct triangles and linear formations. A taxi driver later insisted he saw the sheen reflecting off his vehicle's roof, casting a pale white hue upon the metal. Numerous villagers noted that their cattle stood frozen in the fields, shadows elongated unnaturally under the presence of the hovering orbs. Children clung to their parents, weeping and inquiring about the white beings floating above the capital. The view beyond the base was as vivid and gripping as what unfolded within. Meanwhile, tension escalated inside the perimeter. The base commander convened with his officers. Should they scramble the few fighter jets on alert? The notion prompted discussion, but was ultimately set aside. The lights appeared too agile, too erratic. To engage them could lead to humiliation or, worse still, destruction. Ground patrols were instead dispatched. Soldiers advanced cautiously along the perimeter, rifles poised, eyes attentively directed upward. Radios emitted sharp, terse transmissions. 2 objects were reported moving west, hovering silently. No matter how the patrols maneuvered, the orbs maintained their position above, indifferent to human activity. The illuminating display persisted for nearly an hour as guards periodically glanced at their watches. A few soldiers lit cigarettes in an attempt to calm their nerves. The light intensified, faltered, then intensified again, and suddenly, without warning, the spectacle concluded. With astonishing velocity, the orbs ascended, vanishing from radiant spheres to indistinct specks, disappearing entirely. The sky reverted to the familiar expanse of Lotho, clear, tranquil, and ordinary. The following morning, unease permeated the base. Pilots who had been off duty clamored for revelations about the previous evening's events. Mechanics affirmed that the hangars had been awash in white light. Guards candidly admitted to gripping their rifles, yet feeling utterly powerless. One shared that while they had weapons, they were rendered irrelevant against lights that moved in such an astonishing manner. Reports were diligently written. The commander composed a carefully worded summary for the Ministry of Defense. Observations of unidentified aerial lights had been made above the base perimeter. Movements exhibited intelligence. Duration was considerable. No conventional explanation could be found. His language was deliberate and factual. Civilians, on the other hand, displayed no such restraint. Taxi drivers relayed stories about the white stars that had descended. Farmers recounted their cattle immobilized in that glow. A woman tearfully shared that her children had cried throughout the night, convinced that the orbs were spirits. Rumors swiftly multiplied, narrated in markets and homes, until the tale took on a life of its own. South African newspapers quickly caught wind of the incident. The Johannesburg Star reported on bizarre aerial phenomena over Maseru, referencing sources within the Lotto Air Force. Information was sparse. The government provided no further comment. Officially, all that was conveyed was that lights had been observed, yet the uniformity of the accounts was striking. Guards, officers, villagers, and civilians alike described the same phenomenon. Spherical lights, silent, pulsing with bright luminescence, moving in flawless formation and vanishing skyward at incredible velocity. One officer admitted in private that he had considered scrambling the base's aircraft, but ultimately reconsidered. He reflected that they would have merely embarrassed themselves. The orbs were quicker than anything they possessed. The reality of being a base responsible for safeguarding the nation's airspace was sobering. In the ensuing days, investigators from the Ministry of Defense arrived discreetly. Guards underwent questioning. Officers were requested to illustrate what they had observed. Some men recalled being shown radar logs, though the outcomes were never disclosed. Soil samples were taken from beyond the fences, yet no findings were ever published. Meanwhile, the narrative persisted among the civilians. Children related their experiences to teachers, speaking of the white suns. Farmers debated amongst themselves whether the lights were spirits or machines. Elders asserted it was an omen, a harbinger of future events. Others claimed it was a visitation, evidence that the skies encompassed more than the tangible creations of mankind. Within the confines of the base, the incident morphed into a topic seldom broached, yet perpetually etched in memory. Pilots humorously suggested that the orbs exhibited more mastery over Lotho's skies than they could ever hope to wield. Mechanics recalled the hangars glowing as if under floodlights. Guards confessed to feelings of unprecedented vulnerability while clutching rifles that suddenly felt superfluous. Skeptics posited that flares might account for the phenomenon, yet flares did not hover silently for an entire hour nor exhibit orchestrated movement. Others speculated that helicopters from South Africa could be involved, but helicopters roared with sound, and no one had heard a single noise. Meteors were suggested, yet meteors did not stop abruptly mid-air, pulsate, and then ascend. For those who had stood beneath the orbs, such explanations held no weight. They had witnessed something tangible, and it defied convention. The Lotho Air Force maintained its silence beyond the initial acknowledgement. No press briefings, no subsequent reports, no explanations followed. Silence enveloped the event as if it had never occurred. Yet, memory endured. Families in the highlands recalled their fields flickering with a ghostly glow. Children held on to the fear evident in their parents' expressions. Taxi drivers remembered their patrons craning their necks to glimpse the aerial show, while soldiers recollected standing on the tarmac of their nation's sole airbase, gazing upward at lights that should not have existed. The Lotho Air Force Base incident endures as one of Southern Africa's most remarkable UFO occurrences. It was a night when both civilians and military personnel were witnesses to an unexplainable spectacle, one that caught the gaze of many without warning. The lights materialized above a base tasked with safeguarding the skies, lingering long enough to carve an indelible mark upon the memories of those lucky and unfortunate enough to see them. Then, as abruptly as they had arrived, they vanished into the quiet of the night. For Lou, The tale has blended into whispers, quietly passed along in stories over the years, almost entirely absent from formal records. However, for those who experienced it, the guards peering through binoculars, villagers tending their fields, children watching from their doorsteps, the event remains palpable, undeniable, and shrouded in mystery. The incident at Lotho Air Force Base does not exist in isolation. Globally, similar occurrences resonate with an echo of continuity. Mysterious orbs hover silently above restricted installations, executing movements with precision and departing suddenly into the expanse of the sky. In Norway's Hesteland Valley, luminous spheres have been documented and studied for decades. Down under in Australia, the Mainumin lights continue to mesmerize wanderers across the vast outback. In Texas, the Mara lights appear intermittently, drawing the scrutiny of researchers without yielding any conclusive explanations. More recently, even the world's most sophisticated military organizations have acknowledged encountering unidentified objects breaching secured airspace, grimly defying logical explanation. That a phenomenon unfolded not only over the territories of superpowers, but also above a small, landlocked nation possessing a solitary airbase speaks volumes. The enigmatic does not distinguish between boundaries, technological sophistication, or military might. The lights that illuminated the skies above Maseru in 1995 have earned their place in a global heritage of the inexplicable. They perched, observed, and then departed. And, like countless others, they left only an echo of silence, a haunting reminder that the enigma of the heavens does not belong solely to those of influence, but is shared by everyone inhabiting the land beneath. Perhaps that enduring nature of the tale springs from something deeper. It perseveres not due to the documentation of reports or sensational headlines, but because of the ensuing silence, a silence belonging to armed men who were powerless to act, to families merely watching from the shadows, and to a government that remained resolutely mum. What continues to exist is collective memory, a distant glow lingering above the country's only airbase. An unsettling awareness arises in the minds of the witnesses that, for a fleeting moment, the skies were no longer under their dominion. The Copley Woods incident, spring 1978, presents another case. Nestled near Coventry in the West Midlands, Copley Woods signifies the transition from the suburban sprawl of Coventry into a wild expanse of twisted oak, ash, and thickets. Trails weave through its heart, well-trodden by generations of dog-walkers, joggers, and the occasional schoolchild seeking a shortcut. By day, it remains an unassuming woodland, yet at night it becomes sufficiently dark and still that even local residents avoid lingering too long. Among them, Eric Marston knew its secrets better than most. As the designated groundskeeper, he locked the main gates each evening and traversed the edges to ensure no campers or vandals lurked within. This routine had unfolded repeatedly over nearly a decade without incident, just the standard remnants of small fires or the occasional group of teenagers slipping in after hours. However, one spring evening in 1978 marked a significant deviation from routine. Approaching the north gate, Marston observed a pale light piercing through the boughs ahead. Initially, he presumed it to be the reflection of headlights from a car traversing an unseen path, but there was no roadway in that direction. The glow shifted its position, dipping towards a clearing that Marston knew well, a flat expanse in the woods where debris often gathered after storms. Simultaneously, on a nearby eastern path, Linda Holt and Peter Coley strolled with their dogs, their conversation punctuated by both animals abruptly reacting. Holt's collie grew rigid, its ears flat, while Cowley's Labrador strained against its leash, whimpering uneasily. Though neither walker could discern the source of their dog's distress, both perceived a shift in the atmosphere as an almost palpable stillness settled over the path. From his vantage point, Marston discerned a distinct form emerging in the light. It was not a diffuse glow, rather something solid, spherical, and faintly illuminated. The object glided slowly, cautiously navigating through the treetops before descending into the clearing. Upon gaining full visibility, Marston halted. The sphere measured approximately 6 or 7 meters in diameter, its surface a uniform pale white, appearing to encase the light within rather than emit it outward. From beneath the sphere extended a slender column of light, sharply defined yet thin. The beam swept across the clearing in smooth, deliberate arcs, pausing on patches of grass and the trunks of the trees below. Holt and Cooley, observing from behind the branches, would later describe the object as glass-like, illuminated from within with no discernible seams or openings. Holt recalled the beam of light, unlike that of a flashlight. It did not spill or scatter, but remained precisely focused where directed. Marston drew nearer, halting at the tree line roughly 20 meters from the object. There was an absence of noise, no engine rumble or hum, just the whispering rustle of foliage. The beam glided across the far edge of the clearing, hesitated momentarily, and then turned toward the trees. Wherever the beam touched, the bark appeared to brighten faintly, as though responding to the light. After a minute or so, the sphere ascended a meter or two, paused for a beat, and then shot straight up into the night at breathtaking speed. There was no gradual acceleration. It transitioned from a state of stillness to vertical retreat in an instant, disappearing into the sky without leaving a trace. As Marston stepped into the clearing, he discovered the grass flattened in a nearly flawless circle measuring 8 meters across. The earth was warm beneath his boots, a curious contrast to the coolness of the evening air. Moments later, Holt and Cooley arrived at the main gate, both speaking simultaneously, detailing the same pale sphere and the peculiar scanning beam they had witnessed. A resident who had caught sight of the mysterious light from her upstairs window contacted the police, and within a mere 20 minutes, 2 constables from West Midlands Police arrived on the scene. They examined the clearing, delicately touching the soil while noting the absence of burn marks or any debris. One officer remarked on the warmth of the ground, yet found no indications of fire, proceeding to document a brief report. The following morning, Marston returned to inspect the site once more. To his surprise, 3 men clad in plain clothes were already present, capturing photographs of the clearing and gathering soil and bark samples. One of them briefly displayed an identification card, informing Marston they were affiliated with the Ministry of Defense. They marked multiple trees with chalk while speaking softly among themselves, disregarding Marston's inquiries. Within an hour, the trio departed without further elaboration. That same day, both Holt and Sowley were approached separately. Each relayed consistent accounts of the encounter: a silent glowing sphere, a scanning beam, and an abrupt vertical ascent. Holt reiterated the glass-like quality of the object, while Cowley expressed discomfort over the unnerving stillness of the air throughout the sighting. In the week that followed, Marston observed that the grass within the flattened circle was regrowing at a significantly slower pace than that surrounding it. Several tree trunks encircling the circle bore vertical streaks of pale bark. By April, small patches of sap began to materialize at various heights on those trees. Holt's dog adamantly refused to enter the clearing, consistently pulling away from the path whenever they approached. Local media coverage remained minimal. The Coventry Evening Telegraph published a brief piece attributing the markings to camping activities, citing an unnamed police source. The report omitted any reference to the beam or the object itself. Within days, even casual conversation surrounding the incident began to fade into obscurity. It was not until the early 2000s, following the gradual release of Ministry of Defense UFO files under the United Kingdom's Freedom of Information Act, that the case regained attention. A Defense Intelligence file from March 1978 contained an entry of scant details. Copley Woods, Coventry, noted visual observations of a luminous spherical phenomenon by multiple witnesses, including trained personnel, documenting animal agitation, residual ground heat, and narrow beam activity, with no conventional source. Identified. Attached were sketches from Marston, Holt, and Quiley, each illustrating the smooth sphere and a single beam directed downward. The soil analysis page was heavily redacted. However, a handwritten note in the margin of an accompanying sheet stated, "Trace elements unusual. Further analysis required. Classified." The file concluded with an undated internal letter suggesting the case be categorized under UAP, no defense significance, a term often employed to quietly conclude such cases. It remains unclear whether more detailed analysis is secured within classified archives. For Marston, the sighting lingered vividly in his mind. Although he seldom discussed it publicly, he eventually confided in a neighbor years later, asserting it was not a random occurrence, but rather an entity performing a specific task. Holt and Crawley also kept largely quiet, though neither harbored doubts regarding what they had witnessed. Today, Copley Woods appears unchanged. The clearing has become overgrown, the distinctive circle long faded from sight. Only those aware of the story could accurately point to that precise location. In the official record, the episode comprises a few lines within a file, stripped of significant detail. Yet, for the three individuals who experienced it in 1978, it was far more profound. It came, it scanned, it left, and the reasons behind it remain largely unexplained. The Chicago O'Hare Gate C-17 sighting occurred on November 7, 2006, at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, Illinois, USA. It was a cold, gray afternoon at one of the busiest airports globally. On that day, the tarmac at Chicago's O'Hare International hummed with routine. Jet engines roared, ground crews rushed in vivid neon vests, and runways glimmered with the sheen of early winter rain. Flights were arriving and departing on schedule. Yet, something unusual was hovering just above Gate C-17. Initially, only a handful of airport employees noticed. A mechanic, walking beneath a United Airlines jet, glanced upward and froze. Above Concourse C, amidst the overcast sky, a perfectly round metallic object lingered silently, motionless, seemingly observing. No lights, no noise, no wings. This was not an aircraft, at least not one they had ever encountered. The mechanic promptly radioed his supervisors. News spread swiftly among United employees. Pilots, ramp workers, and gate agents began gazing skyward. Reactions varied. Some gasped, others pointed. One ramp employee later described it as a gray-silver disk, distinctly hovering silently right over their gate. The object remained stationary just below the cloud ceiling, estimated at an altitude of about 1,900 feet. Then, without warning, it ascended through the clouds with such rapidity and force that it punctured a visible hole through the dense overcast layer. Witnesses recounted that it appeared as though a circular cutout had been made in the sky, revealing a patch of clear blue above the gray expanse. The hole lingered for several minutes before gradually closing amidst the shifting vapor. In total, at least 12 United Airlines employees reported witnessing the object. The entire event unfolded within a span of approximately 5 minutes. Not one passenger claimed to have seen it, at least none that came forward. The spectacle remained confined to airline and ground crew personnel who had an unimpeded view of the sky above Gate C-17. Initially, the incident was merely discussed internally at United Airlines, yet by the following day, the buzz began reaching outside ears. Employees started reaching out to the National UFO Reporting Center, NUFF, and later the Mutual UFO Network, MUF. Speculation swirled within aviation circles. The FAA responded swiftly with dismissive assertions. Spokesperson Elizabeth Isham Corey informed the press that the FAA had no record of any unusual object in the vicinity and had not received any radar confirmation. The official narrative portrayed the incident as a mere weather anomaly, a characterization that unsettled many of those who bore witness. Transportation journalist John Hilovich from the Chicago Tribune caught wind of the unfolding events through an insider within United Airlines and embarked on a thorough investigation. His detailed report, appearing 2 months later in early January 2007, triggered waves of intrigue across the national media landscape. With careful precision, the article articulated the accounts of several anonymous witnesses, employees of United Airlines, while underscoring the FAA's seemingly deliberate decision to sidestep a thorough inquiry. Hilovich noted to CNN the substantial credibility of the employees involved, affirming that they were not fabricating tales. They were reliable, seasoned professionals whose observations were strikingly consistent. Notably, the report brought to light an internal safety complaint filed by a United Airlines manager in the immediate aftermath of the incident. Employees recounted being cautioned against public discussions regarding the sighting. One pilot, who had observed the object from the cockpit perspective, lacked authorization to relay his experience publicly, but later corroborated the event anonymously to investigators from MUF. The qualifications of the witnesses lent an unusual weight to this case. These individuals were aviation experts, seasoned in identifying aircraft, monitoring flight behavior, and adhering to strict protocol. This was not a gathering of typical UFO enthusiasts. This was a cohort of trained observers engaged in their duties within one of the most meticulously regulated environments on the planet. In spite of numerous Freedom of Information Act requests, the FAA was initially unyielding in its refusal to disclose information related to the incident. Yet, continued pressure from investigative journalist Leslie Kean and others compelled the FAA to finally release air traffic audio recordings along with internal emails. Although the radar logs were devoid of irregularities, the emails exchanged between United and FAA personnel painted a contrasting picture. Initially, employees from both organizations took the reported sighting with utmost seriousness. An internal FAA email dated November 8 documented that a ramp employee had spotted a disc-shaped object spinning silently around 700 feet above Gate C-17, vanishing at a high vertical speed. Subsequent emails exchanged humorously approached the event, with one FAA manager quipping about the strange circumstances, suggesting a need for alien ID badges if such occurrences persisted. The FAA, however, maintained its stance uncompromisingly. Without radar evidence, no investigation would ensue. They attributed the incident to a hole punch cloud, a meteorological phenomenon arising from falling ice crystals that create gaps in the cover of clouds. However, meteorologists familiar with the phenomenon were swift to dispute this explanation, noting that hole punch clouds develop gradually and are typically accompanied by noticeable ice crystals and pronounced light refraction, none of which were observed that fateful day. Moreover, a hole punch cloud fails to explain the disk's presence hovering for several minutes before it purportedly caused the cleaving in the cloud. Skeptics proposed alternate theories involving experimental drones, misidentified balloons, or a bizarre optical illusion. Nevertheless, none of these possibilities aligned with the behavior or shape, nor the abrupt departure of the object as described by the eyewitnesses. Additionally, no military or private entity came forward to claim responsibility for any operations in the vicinity at that juncture. This sighting garnered particular significance in UFO research circles due to its occurrence within restricted airspace directly above an international airport, an area that is rigorously monitored and controlled. Any unauthorized object loitering near the terminal ought to have incited security protocols, FAA alerts, or potentially even a military response. Yet, such responses never materialized, and the absence of a plausible explanation raised suspicions of a covert cover-up or, at the very least, a blatant disregard for the event. In aviation, norms are explicit. Unidentified aerial objects within controlled airspace pose potential safety risks and should invariably be registered and scrutinized. Yet, in this instance, the involved agencies dismissed the incident without even acknowledging it as an official occurrence. Over time, the O'Hare incident has emerged as one of the most frequently referenced examples of credible professionals encountering a UFO in broad daylight at a vital transit hub. It has found its way into documentaries, literature, and aviation conferences. The case was even deliberated extensively during public hearings concerning UAP, or unidentified aerial phenomena, decades later, where pilots and officials cited it prominently as a compelling argument for improved reporting protocols. Remarkably, none of the United employees who initially spoke out have altered their accounts. Most have declined subsequent interviews, preferring to let the facts resonate on their own. A handful retired, eventually feeling more at ease discussing their experiences. One ramp worker, utilizing the pseudonym Joe R., recounted years later during a podcast interview that it was undeniably there. "I saw it. Everyone around me witnessed it. We were not fabricating anything. It lingered directly above Gate C-17, as tangible as the aircraft we board daily. Then, just like that, it vanished. The circular hole in the clouds, which materialized when the object descended, was also visible to passengers aboard nearby planes. A United pilot reported the curious symmetrical clearing to the tower, bewildered by the anomaly. Archived weather data from that day confirmed no natural phenomena could explain such a sudden disturbance in cloud cover. The FAA's radar reportedly detected nothing out of the ordinary, or so the public was led to believe. In the years following, various attempts have been made to replicate the visuals using computer-generated imagery as a means to ascertain whether a hoax might clarify eyewitness accounts, yet none have succeeded in encapsulating the peculiar silence and precision of the original occurrence. As travelers navigate past Gate C-17 at O'Hare Airport today, they remain blissfully unaware that directly above that very spot on a frigid afternoon in 2006, something hovered defiantly against the laws of known physics, observed in silence by a group of seasoned professionals who have eternally etched the memory of what they witnessed into their minds. Whether it was a drone, an experimental craft, or something not of this world remains a mystery. However, in the orchestrated pandemonium of one of America's most frequented airports, amidst concrete structures, endless radio transmissions, and gleaming glass terminals, the atmosphere parted momentarily and silently, revealing something beyond comprehension that ultimately vanished from sight. And thus, we now turn to the case of the Bahia Blanca abduction. Bahia Blanca, a harbor city perched on the southern fringe of the Buenos Aires province, lay enveloped in quietude on the night of May 31, 1973. The streets, calm and hollow, saw early closures, with the last buses gliding past shuttered shop windows. It was along one of these serene paths that Dionio Yanca, a 25-year-old truck driver, embarked on a journey that would ripple through South America as one of its most contentious abduction narratives. His account, bolstered by tangible evidence and the engagement of both police and military entities, has perpetuated the significance of the Bahia Blanca incident for decades. Having set out shortly before the stroke of midnight, he was tasked with transporting a shipment of tires from the port toward Rio Gallegos. This route was one he knew all too well, having traversed it countless times before. Stopping momentarily outside the city to attend to his vehicle, he adjusted straps and scrutinized his cargo. The night air was brisk, the thoroughfares nearly deserted, and everything seemed frightfully mundane. Yet, as he readied himself to climb back into the truck's cab, a peculiar glow caught his attention, moving low above the fields. At first, he mistook it for the headlights of another vehicle crossing the farmland, but as it approached, he belatedly discerned that it was indeed airborne. The object descended with an eerie silence, oval-shaped and bathed in a bluish-white luminescence. Yanca would later articulate that it appeared immense, perhaps 10 meters across, culminating in a dome with lights encircling its perimeter. It hovered alarmingly close, no more than 50 meters away, casting an ethereal glow upon the grass beneath it. An overwhelming wave of fear enveloped him. He attempted to flee towards his truck, yet before he could reach it, a searing beam of light enveloped him. He recounted feeling immobilized, unable to move as the object glided nearer. The next memory that resurfaced in his mind was that of awakening at dawn by the side of the road, engulfed in disorientation, with his truck idling close by. He discovered he was bleeding from a wound on his head, his clothes in disarray, and his memories shattered. Eventually, stumbling into Bahia Blanca hours later, he collapsed outside a service station. The workers summoned the Argentine federal police, who hurried him to a hospital for treatment. Medical professionals attended to his injuries, bruises, cuts, and what appeared to be burns on his visage and arms. They noted not only his bewilderment, but also the partial amnesia that seemed to cloud his recollections, while his sincerity showed through. He did not exhibit signs of intoxication or delirium. When interrogated by police officers, Yanca obstinately insisted that he had been taken aboard a craft by figures that he struggled to vividly describe. His recollections remained splintered, brief impressions of a radiant interior, sensations of pressure and warmth, accompanied by the unmistakable feeling of being watched by beings taller than himself. He asserted they communicated without uttering a single word. The case piqued the interest of the Argentine Air Force's Intelligence Division, already engaged in monitoring UFO sightings throughout the tumultuous era of the 1960s and 70s. Officers arrived in Bahia Blanca to conduct interviews with Yanka, gather his clothing, and examine his truck. They meticulously documented his claims in a classified memorandum. Local journalists revealed that the Air Force personnel expressed particular concern for the burns on his skin and the peculiar fact that his wristwatch had inexplicably stopped around the time of the extraordinary encounter. Concurrently, the provincial police of Buenos Aires filed their own report, noting the oddities of the case, swiftly escalating their findings to higher authorities. The dual engagement of local law enforcement and the Air Force lent the incident a unique gravity. In the weeks that ensued, Yanka underwent hypnosis sessions facilitated by Argentine psychiatrists. Under regression, he painted a vivid picture of being levitated aboard the craft, immobilized upon a metallic table, surrounded by three entities. He described their faces as difficult to focus upon, pale and elongated, possessing large eyes. They appeared to examine him using various instruments, touching his skin with devices that emitted light, seemingly investigating his blood. At one moment, he remembered one of the beings pricking his finger to draw a sample. When questioned under hypnosis regarding his feelings, the words fear and helplessness escaped his lips. Yet, he also conveyed that the beings did not exhibit hostility. Rather, they seemed clinical, as though he were an animal under scrutiny. Beyond this, his recollection remained a blank slate, leading him to awaken on the roadside hours later. The story captured the media's attention, with newspapers across Argentina announcing the tale of the truck driver abducted by a UFO. Some dismissed it as mere fabrication, while others regarded it with a measure of sincerity. Radio broadcasts echoed interviews of Yanka, who came across as shy and soft-spoken, visibly disturbed by the entire episode. Skeptics contended that Yanka may have suffered a head injury that induced hallucinations and gaps in memory. In contrast, the physicians who examined him confirmed the authenticity of his skin burns, stating they were extraordinary and not characteristics typical of conventional accidents. Some speculated that he had concocted the tale for notoriety. However, those acquainted with him described a modest individual reluctant to seek the limelight, devoid of any history of publicity-seeking behavior. The Air Force never revealed its conclusions, though investigators privately confided that the case lingered in the realm of the unexplained. Rumors suggested that soil samples collected near Yanka's truck exhibited signs of unusual heating, and that his injuries bore the marks of radiation exposure. Whether these assertions were exaggerated remains a topic of debate, but they reinforced the notion that the military had taken the entire matter earnestly. Over the years, the Bahia Blanca abduction evolved into one of the most renowned UFO cases within Latin America. It intertwined elements seldom found within a single narrative: a credible working-class witness, physical trauma, documented police records, military involvement, and vivid recounts under hypnosis. For Yanka himself, the ordeal proved profoundly disturbing. He resumed his life as a truck driver, yet seldom spoke of the incident unless pressed by inquisitive researchers. Interviews conducted in subsequent years reveal that Yanka remained deeply affected by his experience, steadfastly asserting that he had no motive for fabricating the events he endured. "They took me," he stated plainly. "I don't know why they chose me. I don't know who they were, but it happened." Contemporary researchers categorize the Bahia Blanca incident as a close encounter of the fourth kind, an abduction. The case's legitimacy is anchored in a convergence of elements: hospital documentation, police records, interviews with the Air Force, and Yanka's unwavering accounts over the span of decades. Despite the skepticism of some, there exists a recognition, albeit reluctant, that something extraordinary unfolded on that fateful night in 1973. Additionally, this particular case highlights Argentina's distinct position in the annals of global UFO history. During the 1960s and 70s, Argentina emerged as a focal point for numerous sightings. Pilots reported disc-shaped objects soaring above Barralos, luminous apparitions appeared near Córdoba, and accounts of abductions surfaced in more remote provinces. The Air Force's discreet yet consistent interest in these phenomena suggested that Argentina, much like other nations, was grappling with aerial occurrences that defied straightforward explanations. Today, the landscapes surrounding Bahía Blanca remain largely unchanged, with vast, flat pampas stretching endlessly toward the horizon, punctuated by trucks transporting goods across the province. Yet for those who retain memories of Yanka's tale, the night of May 31, 1973, occupies a unique place in their recollections. It is remembered as the moment when an average individual, fulfilling a routine role, encountered something truly extraordinary. It was a night when light descended, time splintered, and the witness emerged irrevocably altered. The Bahía Blanca abduction continues to elude clarification. No medical anomaly, no fabrication, nor any ordinary incident can account for the confluence of evidence. For Yanka, this tale is not mere theory, but a haunting memory. The luminescence in the fields, the immobilization, the shadowy figures bending over him, and the long hours of emptiness leading into dawn. To the Argentine authorities, it became yet another case marked unresolved. To the public, it represents a narrative that straddles the border of the known and the mysterious, lingering in unsettling resonance for those who hear it more than 50 years on. The Yumbo incident unfolded in March 1993. Precise at 2:17 a.m., a brief flicker interrupted the lights in the control room of the Yumbo power substation in Valle del Cauca, dimming momentarily. For the engineers present, accustomed to detecting even the faintest irregularities in a national grid, it was sufficient to halt discussions mid-thought. Situated near the bustling industrial town of Yumbo, the substation represents a linchpin in Colombia's southwestern electrical network, delivering power to Cali and neighboring municipalities. Engineer Jaime Enrique Manes, a seasoned technician with 18 years of experience at the facility, was monitoring the night feed when the surge alert triggered an alarm. A red light flared, followed by a cascade of alerts indicating a rapid depletion of power. The night crew, 3 engineers and 2 security personnel, promptly mobilized. Initially suspecting an equipment malfunction or grid overload, the duo of Manes and his colleague Ricardo Fona advanced toward the high-voltage switchyard, only to be drawn outside by an astonishing sight in the night sky. Suspended approximately 100 meters above the northwestern end of the compound was a metallic disc. It glowed faintly orange, measuring around 10 meters in diameter, and emitted no sound. Its presence was unmistakable. As the 2 men approached the fence, their instruments began to malfunction, reflecting the extraordinary events unfolding. The substation's cameras malfunctioned, and radio communications fell silent. Suddenly, a surge occurred. An unanticipated wave of light, blue, white, and blinding, radiated outward from the object, striking the facility with force. The 5 men instinctively ducked for cover. Sparks erupted from several transformers, and screens in the main control room illuminated with cascading failures. In an instant, the entire substation plunged into darkness. Manes later characterized it as a silent blast that left behind no sound, but all-consuming impact. A wave of panic surged through the facility. Engineers scrambled to implement emergency procedures while security personnel locked down the site. Attempts to contact the central grid operator in Bogotá were thwarted when all phone lines went dead. Within mere moments, the craft ascended straight upward and vanished without a sonic boom or any audible indication of its departure. Restoration of power did not occur immediately, and it wasn't until the following morning that partial service resumed. Repair crews arriving later were astonished by their findings. Entire panels of the external switchgear were fused, indicating the application of immense electromagnetic heat, while wiring within concrete junction boxes had melted rather than burned. The concrete foundation beneath transformer A6 exhibited charring and fracturing, Despite the absence of any internal explosion, scorch marks marked the northern fence of the substation, with no fires reported in the aftermath. Internal logs were rendered illegible in the system's black box, with timestamps corrupted from 2:17 to 2:21 a.m., although one analog paper chart, maintained as a backup, recorded a current spike that surpassed 200% of nominal levels, coinciding precisely with time-stamped pulse of light mains and his colleagues witnessed. By midday, news of the incident reached the Colombian Electrical Authority, ISA, which released a succinct statement recognizing unexplained equipment failures while assuring the populace of restored power. However, the engineers on site understood that reality was far stranger. In the ensuing days, a series of internal communications circulated between the plant and ISA headquarters, one referencing aerial interference of an unknown origin, while another cautioned against further inquiries into the sightings, warning that such questioning could incur disciplinary actions. Yet Manes resisted silence, weeks later engaging anonymously with a local journalist from El País, sharing the extraordinary sighting that had forever altered their understanding of the night sky. His account remained both coherent and rich in technical specifics. He asserted that the object had not simply impacted the electrical grid, but had directly engaged with it, suggesting it might have siphoned off power. It was, he contended, an active intrusion rather than a mere chance encounter. In a rare audio interview for a documentary released in 1994 that focused on Colombian UFO phenomena, Vanka corroborated this perspective. "This was not a mere flicker of lightning or a failed transformer," he stated with conviction. "Such events were familiar to us. This instance demonstrated a clear form of coordination and intention." Public sentiment was sharply divided. Many brushed off the event as mass hysteria or a simple misinterpretation amid a power outage, while others pointed to the consistent reports of strange sightings that same evening from residents in Yumbo and the nearby city of Cali. Listeners of local radio stations recounted seeing a luminous orange disk cutting through the sky, and at least one amateur video emerged, albeit blurry and inconclusive, depicting a light hovering in the vicinity. UFO investigators from Bogotá made attempts to connect with the engineers, yet with the exception of Manes, none would disclose their names, fearing repercussions. By that time, Manes had already handed in his resignation. He revealed that the internal pressure to withdraw his account had become intolerable. An independent assessment of the melted equipment and charred concrete, led by retired electrical engineer Luis Carranza in 1995, concluded that the damage could not be attributed to standard surges, short circuits, or overloads. His findings were presented to the Colombian Institute of Electrical Engineering, but were met with silence. The Colombian government has not initiated any official investigation into the incident. In subsequent years, international UFO researchers began making reference to the Yumbo encounter in their publications concerning electromagnetic interference related to UFOs, particularly in conjunction with notable cases like Cache Landrum in Texas and the Rendlesham Forest episode in the United Kingdom. The recurring motif was unsettlingly familiar: aerial phenomena, pulse waves, electrical outages, and physical destruction. To this day, the engineers who witnessed the events at Yumbo steadfastly maintain their accounts. Menaces, now enjoying retirement, occasionally offers interviews under strict conditions of anonymity. In an email exchange with researcher Diego Marquez in 2011, he expressed that it was not of this world. Uncertainty lingered about its intentions, but he affirmed that they had all seen it. Was the object drawing energy from the grid, or was the blackout merely a byproduct of its presence? Regardless of the answer, the vestiges it left behind, both on the power station and in the minds of the witnesses, endure. On the 1st of August in 1995, the skies above Bariloche, Argentina, sparkled like diamonds against the dark expanse of night. From the cockpit of Flight 674, Captain Jorge Polano tightened his grip on the yoke as the shimmering lights of the city came into view, glimmering across the foothills of the Andes like a radiant necklace. Approaching midnight, Polano, an experienced pilot for Aerolíneas Argentinas, had navigated countless flights through such night skies. However, this night felt different. The Boeing 727 descended steadily toward the airport. Bariloche's tarmac, situated among lakes and snow-capped mountains, was renowned for its erratic wind patterns. As Polano began the final approach checklist, the aircraft's navigation lights reflected against low-hanging clouds meandering off the mountain slopes. Suddenly, the lights flickered, an occurrence brief yet noticeable to Polano. He checked the systems for alerts, finding none. With concern mounting, he radioed the control tower, relaying Flight 674 on final approach. "We experienced a flicker in the lights. Please confirm runway status." The response from the tower came, tense and hurried. "Flight 674, stand by. There is a reported power outage at the airport. Generators are coming online now." Polano leaned closer to the view ahead, scanning the runway for visual cues. His co-pilot broke the silence with urgency, questioning what that was. Polano turned, observing to the left of the aircraft, about 1,000 feet away and rapidly approaching, a vivid blue sphere pulsing with an intriguing light. It maintained a parallel trajectory to their descent, neither ascending nor descending, but matching their speed, silent. No visible engines, no navigational lights, merely that eerie cobalt glow that flickered at the edges as if enveloped in a heat haze. The pilots shared a wordless exchange, observing intently. The sphere rapidly approached, then halted mid-air, as if encountering an invisible barrier, dropping back a moment to allow the aircraft to pass, only to regain its pace shortly thereafter. Polano called again to the tower, expressing that they were being followed by an unidentified object, a bright blue light with no identification and no transponder, approximately 300 meters off the left side at their altitude. A heavy silence ensued before the voice from the tower returned, calm but strained. "Confirmed. Flight 674. We have visual confirmation from ground. Object detected near your flight path." Down at Bariloche Airport, the control tower staff had also noted the peculiar blue sphere hovering dangerously close as the plane approached. Remarkably, the entire airport had experienced a sudden and unexplainable power outage moments prior to the object's appearance. Initial backup systems had failed to activate, leaving only emergency lighting flickering in the dimness. With limited options, Polano initiated a go-around. As the Boeing 727 ascended away from the airport, the blue sphere maintained its position alongside them. It displayed no sign of aggression or retreat, simply a steadfast companion. Then, as swiftly as it had materialized, it veered skyward, accelerating with unimaginable speed into the atmosphere, vanishing among the stars. The aircraft circled back, landing safely on the runway, with emergency lights guiding them to their destination. Once on solid ground, Polano, his co-pilot, and several flight attendants recounted their experiences to airport authorities, their narratives aligned in remarkable detail. Initially, the story was kept hushed, but news leaked, gaining traction within 24 hours in local reporting, later escalating to national coverage. Polano acquiesced to a series of interviews, recounting his observations with a composed demeanor. His recounting was consistently forthright, articulated without embellishment. He expressed to reporters that the object they had encountered was not an aircraft. It was not an atmospheric balloon. It exhibited a deliberate maneuverability and awareness that defied conventional classifications. In response, the Argentine Air Force initiated an inquiry, affirming that radar contact had indeed been registered with an unidentified object, coinciding with the incident's time frame. Civil aviation authorities confirmed the occurrence of a blackout at the airport but could not clarify the bizarre timing or the malfunctioning of the backup systems. Eyewitnesses at the airport, including personnel and nearby civilians, provided uniform descriptions of the phenomenon. A scintillating blue orb gliding soundlessly and with precision through the night sky. Most unsettling was the account of another pilot, from a military crew operating in proximity, who likewise confirmed sighting the same object moments prior to Flight 674's encounter. A technician working within the Barilash airport noted the control panel indicators dimming just before the sighting occurred, describing it as a sensation of energy being sapped away. The blackout enveloped all power, communication systems faltered, and radios emitted only static. While the official reports refrained from labeling the object as a UFO, they referred to it as an unknown aerial phenomenon. Investigators conceded that no standard aircraft could be reconciled with the object's flight characteristics or physical presentation. No satellites or meteorological balloons were identified in the vicinity. Additionally, there were no civilian or military aircraft recorded near Barilash during that period. The weather conditions were optimal, with a clear atmosphere, rendering any unusual meteorological occurrences doubtful. Officials from the power company failed to identify a rationale for the abrupt blackout. For Polano, the entire episode was transformative. Although he continued his career in aviation, his outlook on the skies had fundamentally changed. Through the years, he remained steadfast in his narrative, eschewing profit motives and never altering his account. He eventually participated in international UFO conventions, calmly laying out the particulars of that fateful night without hyperbole. Polano was not alone in this endeavor. Several other crew members later stepped forward to corroborate the events. One flight attendant reminisced about the moment when the lights flickered, recalling the palpable tension among passengers who sensed that something was amiss. Passengers had not received an official briefing regarding the event at that time, yet some noted seeing an unusual blue light outside their windows. Perhaps unexpectedly, civilian and military entities collaborated in the investigation. The Argentine Air Force confirmed radar data aligning with the timing and trajectory of the mysterious blue sphere. No nation took responsibility for the phenomenon, nor was there any knowledge of experimental aircraft operating in that airspace. Over subsequent years, skeptics proposed various alternative explanations, ranging from electrical phenomena to ball lightning and atmospheric optical illusions. However, such theories failed to adequately account for the radar contacts, the synchronized movement with the aircraft, and the corroborating accounts from both aerial and terrestrial observers. And then there was the pilot himself. Polano's account is regarded as one of the most credible UFO reports in Latin America, if not globally. His composed demeanor, professionalism, and aversion to sensationalism garnered respect even among the most skeptical observers. He refrained from claiming extraterrestrial encounters or jumping to hasty conclusions. He merely documented his observations. It was real, he asserted in one of the many interviews. Whatever the entity was, it was airborne and distinctly not of our making. Decades on, the Barilash case continues to captivate aviation specialists, UFO analysts, and skeptics alike. A photograph taken of the airport control room that night, illuminated solely by battery-operated lamps, serves as quiet testimony to the blackout that accompanied the event. Radar logs from both civilian and military sources validate the existence of unregistered objects. One passenger even managed to capture an image as the plane taxied post-incident. The photo depicts the snow-dusted runway aglow with red emergency lights, with a faint bluish glimmer visible in the distance, obscured by fog. Analysts remain divided. Some attribute it to mere optical anomaly, while others harbor reasonable skepticism. Ultimately, while the Barilash incident may not yield definitive answers, it provides another crucial element: testimony from trained professionals, logged radar irregularities, supported by consistent narratives that evade simplistic dismissal. It was a crystalline night above the Andes, a plane poised for landing, and something observed, silent, radiant, and intentional. Then it vanished, leaving a legacy of unanswered questions that persist even today. The Charleston nuclear lights incident of 1974 began for many who resided in Goose Creek, South Carolina, as an unremarkable October evening. Families nestled into their evening routines when an extraordinary sight materialized in the skies over the dense pine woodlands. At approximately 9 o'clock in the evening, a local educator ventured outside to store her bicycle. Gazing upward, she was frozen in place. Suspended silently above the tree line were two luminous discs of light, unwavering and bright, a sight unlike any she had previously encountered. They hovered as if held aloft by invisible threads. She called to her neighbor, who together stepped outside to confirm her observations. Within moments, phones began to ring at Berkeley County Sheriff's Office. A multitude of residents provided similar reports of glowing orbs gliding through the skies above their town, moving toward the Savannah River Plant, a sprawling nuclear facility that lay just across the county boundary. The urgency in the dispatcher's notes was palpable. These were not prankster children. They were families, truck drivers, and educators, all relaying the same unsettling sight of the silent lights. At 9:12 in the evening, the sheriff's office dispatched its first patrol car. Deputy Robert Summers and his partner hurried toward the area from which the majority of the reports originated. As they cleared the town's outskirts, they too witnessed the phenomenon. 2 disks of bright light hovered low on the horizon. Summers would later document in his official report that the objects were luminous, devoid of strobes, navigation lights, or any sound, suspended directly above the sector surrounding the Savannah River Plant. The deputies pulled over and stood in a state of astonishment, unable to speak as they observed. The anomalous lights behaved nothing like the helicopters that frequently traversed the skies in the area. There was no sound, and instead of gliding aimlessly, they darted with agility, halting suddenly as if governed by precise commands. Summers attempted to radio the sighting back to headquarters, but his transmission faltered, breaking into bursts of static whenever the objects drew nearer. Dispatch confirmed his communication was struggling. By that time, traffic on Highway 52 had come to a crawl as drivers parked their vehicles to gawk. Truckers transporting goods to Charleston also reported the lights from their cabs. One described them as radiantly bright, comparable to welding arcs, gliding silently across the sky as if scanning the earth below. Residents alongside Goose Creek stood in their yards, pointing toward the dim glow of the nuclear facility in the distance. Nonetheless, there was one point of agreement among all witnesses. The lights did not sway with the breeze. They exhibited a deliberate control. The schoolteacher who initially noticed them later recounted that the objects moved in an intelligent manner. They weren't simply floating, they were making decisive maneuvers. That aspect alone was disconcerting. By 9:30 in the evening, numerous sheriff's units had arrived at the scene. Considering the proximity to the Savannah River Plant, the deputies reached out to the Berkeley County Civil Defense Office. Civil defense personnel recorded the lights as aerial unknowns and promptly informed the U.S. Air Force liaison officer tasked with monitoring such incidents. Although Project Blue Book had concluded its official investigations in 1969, the Air Force continued to maintain discrete procedures for processing UFO reports near sensitive locations. Nuclear installations were prioritized highly, and the Goose Creek accounts fell squarely into that category. On the ground, deputies eliminated conventional explanations. Helicopters could not hover without noise at such heights, nor could they accelerate with the quick bursts of speed being observed. Flares extinguished rapidly and drifted downward, a behavior that did not apply to these disks. Aircraft from the nearby Charleston Air Force Base were also ruled out after controllers confirmed no traffic was in the vicinity. In a moment of unexpected daring, one deputy directed a flashlight beam toward the objects. To his astonishment, one of the disks shifted subtly, seemingly in acknowledgement. The deputy later confessed he felt a chill, realizing for the first time that the lights appeared to possess an awareness of their presence. Meanwhile, civilian reports flooded in. Families described their pets reacting strangely, dogs barking wildly, livestock pacing anxiously in their fields. A farmer on Goose Creek's outskirts reported that his cows had stampeded from the pasture when the lights hovered above. The consistency of these accounts fortified what law enforcement was observing firsthand. In the background, the incident reached the Atomic Energy Commission, which supervised operations at the Savannah River Plant. Any potential aerial intrusion represented a matter of national security. While no public announcement was made, subsequent investigations revealed that the AEC was discreetly informed and that case details were forwarded to Air Force channels. Authorities were deeply troubled by the apparent correlation. The lights seemed to concentrate around the nuclear site, moving directly above it and then pacing along its perimeter. This mirrored occurrences reported throughout the United States, where UFOs had been sighted over missile silos, nuclear plants, and military depots. Goose Creek was joining the list of locations registered within that disquieting trend. Despite the eyewitness reports, not everyone was convinced. In the weeks that followed, skeptics posited that the deputies and local civilians had misidentified aircraft landing lights or were deceived by atmospheric reflections. However, such explanations disregarded crucial details. The lights moved contrary to the wind. They maintained periods of stillness and accelerated to speeds unattainable for conventional aircraft. Most critically, they were recorded by trained law enforcement personnel and officially logged in both sheriff's and civil defense records. Deputy Summers, in an interview years later, dismissed the skeptics with resolute conviction. They understood what helicopters looked like. They were aware of the sounds planes made. This was distinctly neither. It was something altogether different, and it hovered directly above the plant. Although this event did not make headlines, it left an enduring legacy in Goose Creek. Families recounted the experience of watching the radiant discs from their lawns. Truckers shared stories about that night over CB radios for many years. Deputies exchanged the narrative quietly, fully aware that speaking too openly could invite ridicule. The sheriff's office duty log meticulously documented the incident in straightforward handwriting. Deputies observed luminous objects above the Savannah River plant, with multiple civilian reports filed. The situation remained without a conventional explanation. Civil defense maintained its comprehensive records, classifying the sighting as unresolved. The Goose Creek lights persisted as an enigma. They were witnessed by families, truckers, and teachers. They were recorded by deputies, escalated to civil defense, and submitted to the Air Force liaison. Their silence, their hovering, and their focus on a nuclear facility defied understanding. For researchers, the case stands among the most compelling American examples of the UFO nuclear connection. It shared an unsettling resemblance to incidents at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana and the Hanford site in Washington state, where lights appeared, hovered, and vanished over humanity's most dangerous technologies. Nearly 50 years later, Goose Creek has expanded into a larger town, with neighborhoods sprouting around the old highways. The Savannah River plant persists in its operations, shrouded in layers of fencing and diligent security. Most locals remain unaware that one October evening in 1974, law enforcement personnel stood vigilant beneath unidentified glowing discs, hovering over a facility that lies at the very center of the nuclear era. The Goose Creek lights, enigmatic in their presence, left no remnants, no photographs, and no radar indications, yet they bequeathed something precious: testimonies. Sworn accounts from deputies, records maintained in sheriff's offices, notifications to civil defense units, and the recollections of those who gazed skyward in wonder all contribute to the narrative. This incident remains a striking example of the inexplicable invading community life, hovering over its most critical location before silently vanishing without a trace. A riddle as luminous and as hushed as the lights themselves. We appreciate your company this evening on Night Archive. Should you find these tales captivating, remember to like, subscribe, and return tomorrow for more encounters with the unknown.